And when I say immediately, like, how quickly do you think we would be doing that?
I mean, by July 1st, Kleinfelder could be under a contract with you guys. I mean, and then I think we said maybe a month to get the documents bid ready, a couple months to bid and award. And so construction could be started in the fall of this year.
Okay, and then we have a projection here that will come back in 2025 and ask town meeting for another 3.5 million, and then in 2026, another 3.5 million. And that would hopefully be SRF, correct? And what about Phillips Beach and the other beaches? Where are we at with those beaches and testing?
Yeah, so the 132,000 for the MS4 outfall inspections, like that'll be the fund mechanism to start looking at those outfalls. So those we have as coming out of the general fund. I believe that's at annual town meetings. So yeah, that can also be like an FY25 exercise. Getting crews out there and starting to look.
Thank you.
Dave, quick question for you. Just around the dollars, and you had mentioned packaging, similar to what happened in phase one, where we eliminated phase 1D and combined it with phase 1C. Any sense of what the savings were at the end of phase one and what the potential savings could be by packaging, as was your recommendation or suggestion in the presentation a few minutes ago?
I think we were originally thinking about 10 million for phase one, so I mean, it's pretty significant. That being said, we're not seeing the lining costs have gone up. I think the resins that are used to create these lining stocks, those prices have gone up a lot in the last year or so. So recent bids, we've been seeing those prices going up. So, I mean, we're going to see what we get with bids, but it's, I'm not sure we're going to see the same thing we did in phase one. So we'll have to just be careful with that.
Got it. But in phase one, we saw savings of millions of dollars, is what you're saying by combining these.
Yeah, from over our estimate. Yep.
Yes.
Well, we really didn't combine 1, C, and D. We were able to add on to C because the cost was so low and we had the money available.
Fair enough. Thanks, Gino.
Actually, that'll be pretty evident on the next slide, if we're ready to go to that one. Go ahead, John, next slide. I'll just, I'll point to what Gino was just referring to. So this 2021 blue bar kind of represents the phase 1C cost, and, it's phase 1A, phase 1B, phase 1C, they just went up and up and up because we were seeing favorable pricing, and we just elected to combine it into a bigger phase 1C, and that worked out great. So I think originally we were targeting averaging $2.5 million for each of those, and it worked out, a little bit less than $2.5 million. I think if you average those three out. So what I wanted to kind of show with this slide, this is a lot of the same information on the previous slide, just in a really different visual graphic. Going all the way back to 2015 when the consent decree started, this sort of represents as a bar chart sort of the investments made by the town in the various programs of design and construction for sewer rehab. The blue bars are monies from the Sewer Enterprise Fund. The orange bars are bars that came out of the SRF program or will come from the SRF program. And then the green bars are from ARPA. And really, I think what this shows is that we had a steady pace of investment. We'd always planned to go every other year. Even though it looks like nothing's happening in 2018, 2020, these are construction years that are going through that time period. But we averaged, here in this blue line, if you don't consider the benefit of ARPA funds, we averaged a little less than $1 million a year over the first, phase one, basically. And kind of what we're trying to show is that when you take our phase two approach, where we're trying to accelerate how we do it, we're making the contracts bigger, and we're going to use SRF funds, the average allocations per year is going to be closer to $3.5 million. So really, I think it's a recognition that there's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of interest to get this work done. And so we're trying to build a program that's responsive to that, and we'll get that work done. What's not as obvious in the bar charts is all the additional work that's been going into this beyond just fixing pipes. So we talked a little bit about complementary measures, and we'll talk with some slides later on it. But just in the last couple of years, I think with the town's leadership, there's been a lot of additional work with putting together like a steering group that goes outside the border of Swampscott. So we're having regular meetings with the state delegation, the City of Lynn, Lynn Water and Sewer Commission, EEA, EPA, DEP, CZM. We've really, who did I miss? DCR. So we've really been putting our heads together to ask the question, what could we possibly do in addition to fixing these old pipes to try to get the water quality better, keep the beach open longer. And we understand that if Swampscott acts alone, it's not going to work. So we have to get Lynn and Swampscott sort of on board in concert with one another. And so I know it's been presented at a lot of meetings, but some of the ideas that we looked at was end-of-pipe treatment. So, could we, in theory, bring the Lynn and the Swampscott drainage together and do some sort of like a treatment system, which could take the shape as like a chemical disinfection or a ultraviolet disinfection. Would be two pretty established technologies. These are mostly in wastewater, but in stormwater, there are applications for it. It's just not as common. And then we looked at, could we potentially pump dry weather flow to the Lynn treatment plant, kind of similar to what the underdrain is doing right now, but do it to all the drainage. That seemed very counter to what the regulators would like to see. And it would have some issues with capacity at the Lynn plant. So that one didn't make it very far. But the other idea that has still maintained a lot of traction, and the EEA, EPA, DEP have really favor it, is looking at some sort of a combined outfall extension deeper into the ocean, which would really take advantage of dispersion, with the understanding that we're continuing to try to find and eliminate the sources. One of the main reasons why this is such a public health issue is that the outfall is directly on the beach. There's a lot of other outfalls that have contamination issues, but they either go to some sort of like a storm drain tank and then they get pumped somewhere, or they don't go on the beach. They go somewhere where people don't swim. So, that's why these issues are so important for the town and public health. That we're trying to find ways to add on to, just simply fixing the pipes. So this working group has been meeting, fairly regularly. And what, we're really trying to do is get them as excited about these solutions as we are, and offer commitments in terms of helping with permitting. So any of these solutions is going to require environmental permitting. All of those require timelines, and can any of those timelines be streamlined? And so we already have a commitment from the state that that's something that they can look at. We've also been talking quite a bit about funding. The state, their main funding program is SRF, as we've been talking about, which is wonderful, but we still are trying to find and uncover grant opportunities to help out as well. So, really what this arrow is showing is sort of an ongoing effort, working with Lynn and all these other partners to really step up and see what we can do. And so I think like this slide is sort of the totality of, the funding that the town is committing to, and then also, wrapped across that, these complementary measures that we're working on. Next slide, John.
Wait, I have a question before you get to asset management.
Me too.
Did you want to go first?
No, please.
Okay. So I want to talk about the alternatives that the steering committee is going through. I just really want to get a serious update of what that is. And I'm looking through my old notes. It looks like we have, oops, sorry about that. We have I think you did you do a design on an extension pipe out there?
No design.
We have no design, because I have here 295,000 for an extension design study.
Yeah, so that, I don't think design's the correct word, so it's what we did in our feasibility study a couple years ago, which first put the outfall idea out there. We looked at some peer studies, like where other outfall designs have been done, to try to figure out what's a reasonable dispersion that, the bacteria will, what rate of dispersion. So we estimate how far out into the ocean does this outfall pipe need to be. And that number was based on, very much back of the envelope, looking at like peer examples, but no empirical data in Nahant Bay. And so that budget, the 295, is to basically do some oceanography, empirical samples to understand wave, current, dynamics in Nahant Bay, and then develop a three-dimensional dispersion model. So if you put at the end of a pipe, like at the bed of the ocean, X, Y, Z, where are those particulates going to go? How quickly is it going to disperse? And how many feet from that point is it going to get to the point where it's like low enough that it's not a health hazard, right? And because the low tide goes out so far, it's like that's like your starting point. You have to get at least to there, and then you have to get out into the ocean. So that's kind of what that was intended to do, was
Okay.
really put more rigor behind how far out we think that needs to go, and then update our construction cost estimate. Because the construction cost estimate was basically kind of a back of the envelope based on some high-level assumptions, but really to get serious about that, we kind of need to get a tighter number around that, so.
And then what about what I would like to know is, where are we with the UV testing, UV pilot? What are those costs looking at? The acid testing, we had an acid testing that we're doing, where are we with that? And then I just recently heard that there's a possibility of paying a private company to test ozone.
I'm not going to be able to speak to that, but
Okay.
yeah, I've heard about that.
I just want to have an idea of where are we with finances on the steering committee?
Yep.
What is it looking like as far as putting an actual pilot together? Where are we with all this?
So, John, can we skip over the asset management piece? Yep. Go to the next slide. We'll just get right to each one of them. Okay, so this is the outfall extension alternative, Mary Ellen. So, here we go. So we had said 4,500 feet based on information that we had out there, just that was peer, other kind of studies, but this needs to be confirmed. So that number, the 295, was a proposal to do that. Since that was submitted, that proposal, the scope went to EPA and Mass DEP. They have commented on that scope, so we're working with Woods Hole Group, which is going to be a major player in that study, to update that. So that has not yet been submitted back. Let's see. So my hope is that we can get that work going this year if possible. One of the elements of that is to look at eelgrass in Nahant Bay, because that's going to be a big factor for like construction. We already know that CZM and Army Corps of Engineers are going to prefer us to do like a trenchless construction to the degree that we can, to minimize eelgrass impacts. But the eelgrass study needs to be done sort of like late summer. So I just want to make sure that we don't miss this year for that portion of it. So next steps is to finalize the scope of the study, and then get that going. One of the outcomes is going to be more confidence as to like what construction methods are we going to recommend, what's the construction cost going to be, and then we also had in there like a permitting work plan. So there's maybe 8-9 permits in that neighborhood that are required for something like this, and we had that fairly conservatively estimated in our original study. I think it was like 3, 4, 5 years of permitting, like a pretty significant permit effort. But those are the kinds of things that the state is looking at to see if we can, not circumvent, but like streamline those permits and get them done faster and take that implementation period down.
I just have a question about this alternative. Since the tide is such a additional cost mechanism because the low tide goes so far out, and so the pipe has to be so much longer to compensate for that. Has there been any discussion in the small group about diverting the water to an outfall that doesn't have the tide issue? And then still doing an extension?
So that was one thing we looked at really early on, was basically like moving the outfall to a different portion of the beach that didn't have like people, basically, right? Just like the back of the envelope cost and logistics to that was sort of, it really quickly failed that one. That got pulled out pretty quick.
The cost of moving the outfall is so much greater than the extension
What's-
potentially.
Once you're in the ocean and you're doing like a horizontal directional drill in there, like that's going to be your best bet from a cost perspective.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the outfall extension. Next slide, John. Okay, so I did mention UV as something we looked at for end of pipe. So Mary Ellen's correct. There is an ongoing study for UV sampling. It's a $50,000 study. Yesterday was our first sample that we took. We were basically waiting for the winter to end and us to stop using road salt because we were concerned about how road salt might affect things. But basically what we're doing is one of the biggest manufacturers of ultraviolet disinfection equipment is called Trojan Technologies in Toronto. And so they are partnering with us to do testing at their site in Toronto. And so what our staff did yesterday was collected drainage samples from both the Lynn and the Swampscott side, packaged those up and sent them to Toronto. And so what they're doing is they're looking at how much power do you need to put out of a UV bulb into a stormwater sample to kill the bacteria by a certain amount. And what's really important is the clarity of the water. So if the water is like turbid and has a lot of solids in it, that's going to prevent the light from penetrating into the water, and it's going to like reduce the effectiveness of the kill. And that's one of the big concerns that EPA and DEP have expressed, is that, you know, there's algae in the water, like there's tidal influence. So during high tide, you might be getting solids in, and then low tide going out. And that's something that we've thought about in our like concept here, is that we're looking to not touch the water that would be coming in from the ocean. It's really just the positive drainage coming out. So during high tide, this facility wouldn't be receiving any of that ocean water. So part of this is going to make sure that we prevent that high tide from going backwards up the system and influencing the treatment system. There's a lot of complications with something like this. Like, one of the biggest things is where the heck do you put it? Like, so in our study, we looked at, I think it's 3 New Ocean, is that the right address? 3 New Ocean, which is where the town has a former water booster station and a former chemical station for the water system, which is no longer really used. And it's a very small site. It's right on the Lynn-Swampscott border. But like, in terms of siting something close to the ocean that's sort of out of the public eye, it was, you know, one of the best sites that we found. There's very limited number of options. And so a site analysis is going to be very challenging, very controversial if we ever get to even looking at siting for UV. But right now, we're not there. Right now, we're just trying to prove to ourselves and to EPA and DEP that this will work, this technology will work. So we have, I think we're planning to go out 8 or 9 times during different wet weather and dry weather conditions, different tidal conditions. And each time, we're going to send those to Toronto. They're going to run their samples. Logistically, this is pretty difficult because the Toronto lab, they run their own bacteria, but they don't do it over the weekends. So they basically have to get our samples by Wednesday to run the bacteria Wednesday into Friday, and then give us the results. So we basically can't sample Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So we have 2 days out of the week, and we're looking for specific tide conditions and specific weather conditions. So, you know, we're keeping an eye on the calendar and the tidal charts, and we're going to get there as fast as we can. But yeah, this is just getting underway. I would bet that this year is just going to be dedicated to this and see what the results are. There has been talk about a pilot, which would be like Trojan would basically take a mobile UV treatment plant on a tractor trailer, and they would park it probably at the Triangle, right at the ocean. And we would set up a temporary pumping system and maybe a generator to operate those pumps, and you'd pump a sample of drainage through that UV system and kind of run it continuously for a couple months. So you'll see all sorts of different conditions and see it run. We're pretty convinced that you're going to get a marginal benefit for doing that over and above what we're doing now. I think the lab sampling that they're going to do is going to tell us a lot, and I'm not sure that we have to go to a pilot. The plan is to send the results over to EPA and DEP, have a conversation with them, and if some of those allay their concerns about the technology in stormwater, then that'll be helpful. It'll help prove that it can work. So that's where we are with UV. Any questions, Mary Ellen? Is that?
No, I understand the UV thing. I just want to know about the other two options that are in there. And I do want to have, Sean could probably send this out to us. I do want to have a cost estimate on all of these things.
Yep.
For testing and then for pilot, just so we have a clear idea of what it's going to cost, Swampscott.
Yep. Next slide, John. All right, so if you've read the original study from 2 years ago, we sort of took chlorine disinfection off the table as an end-of-pipe treatment, but just in the last 6 months, I think it was in December, the idea of kind of looking at it again sort of came up. I think the hope was that, we could, in theory, put a fairly simplistic, not very complicated chemical disinfection system in Lynn and Swampscott's drainage and get effective bacteria kill, at a reasonably low cost, and have that available as an infield pilot. And so that concept came up just in December, sort of through separate conversations. And specifically what we're looking at is comparing sodium hypochlorite or bleach, basically, which is what is commonly used at wastewater plants for disinfecting, killing bacteria, versus peracetic acid, which is effectively a mix of acetic acid and vinegar and hydrogen peroxide, so kind of household things that is fairly strong oxidizer. And so what we're doing right now is we've subcontracted with a company that specializes in pilots, and they're taking samples from Lynn and Swampscott, they're taking them back to their lab, and they're basically subjecting it to these two disinfectants, and over time they're looking at what is the bacteria kill, and how many minutes of contact time does it take to get to a reasonable kill. So we worked with EPA and DEP to put the scope of this bench scale testing together. We have talked about, could we advance this into a full-scale pilot, which would mean mobilizing like probably a container, like a box, that would have some pumps and some chemical solution in there and be like basically pumping chemical into the drain system, which the town actually used to do that quite a few years ago. So it wouldn't be too dissimilar from what was happening a while ago. Our hope was that the peracetic acid would prove to be very effective. It's a stronger oxidizer. It generally doesn't have a residual that would be concerning, and so we felt like that would be a good one to test. So we're testing them both side by side right now. We've completed 2 samples. We're going to be out there tomorrow collecting the 3rd sample, and we're analyzing that. And so as of right now, we're a little stuck in putting together like a budget for what a pilot might look like, because we don't know how much chemical we would have to dose. So we don't know the size of the pumps, we don't know the size of the piping, we don't know the size of the trailer. So we need a little bit more information out of the bench scale before we can get sort of an accurate budget on the pilot. I think our aspirational hope was that we could do something this summer, and it's each day goes by, it's getting a little bit less likely. One of the other things is that EPA doesn't have a permitting mechanism to allow us to put peracetic acid in the drain. They actually have to use existing permitting mechanisms they have and sort of flex them for our purposes. So there's no like off-the-shelf PAA permit that they've used in other places, because this is not used in stormwater. This is like a really kind of a, innovative idea of like using a strong oxidant to get the disinfection we want. And so they're willing to work with us. They're going to flex themselves to the best they can to permit it, but they need to see the results from the bench scale first.
And that's safe to run out on the beach?
So one of the things that we're going to test in the bench scale, it's called a whole effluent toxicity test, which is really common at like wastewater plants. And basically you put the chemical in a solution and you see like what does it do to organisms, basically. So if we find that to get the effective bacteria kill in PAA, we need like concentration X, and we need 5 minutes of contact time, but then at the end of the pipe, that is going to have like a toxicity kill.
Right.
Like we're not going to get approved to use that, right? So that's why we're doing this at a bench scale, so that we have the data to show whether it's safe and effective, right? So.
I know we skipped ahead, but I have a question back to phase 2, if that's okay. Sort of jumping around, but I wanted to talk about laterals. Back in phase 1, it says here we as the town repaired 470 private sewer laterals or rehabbed. I assume that for phase 2, we will also be repairing private sewer laterals. Is that correct? That's the projection for phase 2?
Yeah.
So of the estimated or approximate $6.5 million, do we know approximately how much it cost us to repair 470 private sewer laterals?
I think it was around 40% of that. It was, I believe.
40% of what?
The total cost.
I think it was in that neighborhood. Yeah, significant.
So we had talked about in the December meeting that other towns have initiatives that require private homeowners, when they trade their houses, that they do some testing and they get a clean bill of health for their lateral and they get to sell it. And I know Andrea Moore I had never heard of that, and she told us all about it. So that was something she educated me on. Have we looked into that at all?
We have. We discussed that when we talked about the INI, and we thought about, making those recommendations. We have a new committee to kind of look at that, and that's something that I think our new committee can evaluate, and they can look at a number of communities where it has been successful. I've also identified a number of communities. I've talked to David and Gino about this. I think it's something that Swampscott should adopt, and I think it should be part of, our ongoing approach to protect the water quality.
So we won't have that in place for at least phase 2A or?
We could roll that up pretty quickly. Obviously, it's too late for the annual town meeting, but this could be something for a fall town meeting. If the board is interested in this, I'd be happy to work with the team and the committee.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's not going to solve all our problems because not every house in that area is going to be traded in that, the next year or 2 years. And this is obviously just going forward when houses sell. But, obviously it will mitigate some of the costs because that's extraordinary.
Everything helps.
And anything we can do to prevent that from continuing to be.
Do we have something in place right now? Because I brought this up with Gino, and he said, we do have something in place.
Yeah, right now, when a homeowner goes to sell their home, we have to do a final read to sell it. So as part of the final read, we go in there and inspect to see if there's any sump pumps that are tied into the sewer system. And if there are, we just say we're not gonna give you another read until you correct that problem. And we really don't even have that in the bylaw, but we have a lot of leverage at the time because people want to sell their homes and
Right.
they take care of that for us.
Yeah, the trick though is that if we want to clean up the beach, we don't want to be sitting around waiting for people to fix their laterals when they sell their house, right? So we want to get these laterals fixed now while we're in the ground. So that's,
I think I brought this up before.
Yeah, but-
I'll tell you, I know it wasn't a real popular decision, but back in 2015, I might have been one of the only ones around. And after talking with Norwood, they went in and did a similar project, and they just relined the mains, and their results were horrible. Then they went back and did laterals, they had pretty good results, right? You and I met with Mark Ryan over there. So we said, instead of going into a part of town disrupting it twice.
Right.
Let's just do it once. I know it's a lot of money, and I also get beat up a little bit because we only do the laterals that are crossing over the sewer. So if you're on the other side of the street, you're not really getting the benefit of having your sewer service lined, but
Yeah, I would say the initiative like this is really maintenance, right? Like going forward, it's preventative, right? So now in 10 years from now, we're not having a whole nother set of laterals that we're having to fix because it's clear that we will. That's the thing about laterals, right? Tree roots and everything.
unless they're PVC. You know, the clay ones Dave's alluded to, they don't have sealed joints, so the roots get in there. PVC sealed, we don't find as many, hardly any problems.
Okay.
So I just actually had one question, just about the $3.5 million that's going to go into, that's going to be expended over the course of the next 3 years. So, Dave, with what degree of certainty will the beach be, will Kings Beach be open and free of contaminants, assuming the town moves forward with expending $3.5 million over the next 3 years, 3.5, so $10.5 million.
That's an easy question. No, I mean, what I can say is that by the time those three are done, the whole salmon or light pink area will have been, pretty much rehabilitated. So there's contaminants that come from other places, right? And one of the things that we have to take off the table first is like the human source from buildings. Like you have to just deal with that. Once you're past that, then you start asking those secondary questions about, pet waste and dog waste and stuff that might be in the drain system. Like in other communities that we're dealing with this, we're asked, like the human source isn't really the problem. So we're asking questions like, is there sediment in your pipes that's just kind of like a community for like growing bacteria? And is that, hot and humid? Is it growing bacteria? And then when it rains, it like pushes all that out, right? So I think what I can say with some certainty is that your dry weather sources from humans are going to be substantially mitigated after the end of these three for the Kings Beach area. But that's not the same thing as saying the beach is going to be like open all the time. The other part that we have zero control over is what Lynn is doing, right? So if Swampscott took care of all of his bacteria and Lynn, 3 years from now is where it is today, it's still going to be closed quite frequently, right? So that's why we're working with Lynn very closely to make sure that we're coordinated and we have a plan kind of like together as a region.
And that's why we need those supplemental efforts such as the outfall or,
Correct.
yeah, got it. Thank you.
I have just one quick question. On that entire Phase 1 area, how much of that area will our infrastructure be relined or be up to a status of good repair? Whereas, you had said that we have 50% of our infrastructure is over 100 years old. So in that area, when you're finished, what will be pretty new?
John, you're on. I don't know if you have that in your head from Phase 1. I mean, like I mentioned, there are sections that, like, if the stormwater quality was great, like we wouldn't necessarily go out of our way to repair that right away. That would just be it'd be a lower priority.
Right.
But what I will say is that the town's been looking very, I think, big picture at its assets in general. We do have a section here on asset management. What that's going to do is find what is the second tier or high risk pipes that need to be addressed, absent of all of this, right? So age and condition are that in and of itself are reasons to do work, right? So. Let's say just for talking purposes, we rehab 90% of the sewer system in the Phase 1 area, 10% wasn't done. But that stuff is still, maybe older older VC clay pipe. We may be doing that as part of the asset management work, not necessarily through the sewer rehab program. So that's kind of where, the town has really been stepping up and layering a lot of different approaches to really think hard about its infrastructure and what its needs are. And so the asset management report has laid out a CIP for sort of continually looking at its sewer system, throughout the entire town, like just, even well past these areas. Making sure we understand what material it is, what diameter it is, what condition it's in, and then putting together like rehab contracts after that. So this is going to be just basically normal business, going forward until the system is where it should be. Similar to the water, yes.
We have made a decent investment on that over the years.
And then what about, you can't comment on this ozone stuff that I'm hearing about? Sean, can you comment on that?
I can. I've sent information off to Kleinfeld. I've done a little research myself. This is a type of technology that's usually used in ponds and lakes. I haven't seen it used in ocean environments. David, I don't know if you have any additional insights. I think everybody's looking at anything that could help protect human health. I think we've spent years just putting together, alternative analysis. We looked at relocating pipes, moving pipes. We've looked at everything up and down. And frankly, if anybody's got an idea, I'll look at it. I just don't know if the science really deals with the ocean as effectively as some of the items that we're studying right now. I wish there were a dozen ideas. It's hard because I think everybody wants to believe that there's an easy fix here. There just doesn't seem to be. It's constant, just vanilla status of good repair approaches to fixing pipes and thinking about, a supplemental that will protect human health from the immediacy of the public health risk.
So I'm all for testing anything and everything, but my concerns are using taxpayer dollars for proprietary product to come in. My concerns are financing a business, financing their test. I guess it looks to me pretty simple. If you have a product and it works, show us it works, and then put it into the cost of the product. And if we're being asked to spend money to see whether or not your product works, I have concerns about that.
I
Just
very
wanted
much
to let you
appreciate that fiduciary. I want to be a partner and I want to collaborate with folks, but certainly I share some of that skepticism.
I mean, if somebody comes in and shows us, hey, we have a product that works, I want to do whatever we can to say, here we go, pull the trigger and get them on board, but I don't want to have to pay for it up front.
Understood.
We don't have a funding source for that right now anyways. So we
Well, you
would
have a
to-
funding, you do have a funding source through your steering committee. You have $400,000 in the steering committee to be using money for different testing.
I thought that was gonna be for
Yeah, that's pretty,
If you've already
that's a
alloc-
really tight
Yeah.
scope of work
Yeah.
for some things we've already outlined.
I think
Fair point,
You know your stuff.
but we asked, well,
my understanding is the 400,000 is for the IDDE of Phase 2 and the design of that. That's
because when we asked for that $400,000, yours wasn't even in the picture.
But there's other money, I don't know if it's 400,000, there's other money for the various other options, and I think, so I'm understanding Mary Ellen, it's like
Yeah, it's under your,
theoretically, it could be in that other couple 100,000 or something for testing complementary strategies, so.
oh, Gino, the 400 you're thinking about is in the state, in your design phase.
Okay.
Asset management?
Sure, yeah. John, can you go to the asset management? And I don't know if you feel like you want to unmute and walk us through this, or you want me to do it? I don't have a preference. Oh, thank goodness you unmuted. Need some water.
We can't hear him.
Yeah. All right, we can't hear you, John, so I'll go through it.
Hold on, give it a minute.
It's because we don't
Okay.
have volume. coming from
Next
that
slide, John.
speaker.
Yeah.
All right, there it is. Okay, so, oh, thank you. Yeah, thanks. It's right there. So the town got through the SRF program, they got a grant I think it's 60% paid with a 40% match of the asset management plan. So what Mass DEP through the SR program really values is that communities are thinking ahead with their infrastructure, that they're fiscally responsible, that they have even, cash flow in, cash flow out. And so they really, they very freely give money to communities to look at asset management of their water, stormwater, and sewer infrastructure. And so we were able to get onto the SRF loans, and we started this project, it says here in 2023. John on the phone was a pretty major player in putting this all together, so, but I can pick my way through this fine. So, yeah, we looked at the drain, sewer, and water, and kind of a fundamental element of an asset management plan is to look at your infrastructure from a risk perspective. So risk is basically two things. It's how likely is my infrastructure going to give me problems, right? Like how old is it? Or like, what's the likelihood that something's going to go wrong? And then the second question is, if something goes wrong, what's going to happen? Like, what's the consequence of that? So, every pipe in the road is not the same. They're different diameters. They have a different number of customers that are using that pipe, things like that. So what we do is we look at all the infrastructure at a very like a bird's eye view of, what age is it, what material is it, where is it located, how many customers does it have, and things like that. And so we identify what's the risk target or what's the risk value associated with this asset or this infrastructure. And then based on that, we say, well, the really high risk infrastructure we need to look at. Maybe we don't have enough information about it today to do anything about it from like a design and construction standpoint, but that needs to be the very first tier of infrastructure that we get our eyes on. So that's, putting cameras in the pipes or in manholes, maybe doing some pressure testing of your water system, things like that. And so that's really the core of the program. And then putting together a 20-year capital plan that has maybe 5 years outlook is fairly accurate, and then the year 6 through 20 is not quite as accurate, but at least we're identifying what some of the needs are and putting them out there. And the hope is that this is something that gets looked at, by town planners, on an annual basis as you're budgeting for the upcoming years. Is, did we actually do this project? No, we got to move to the next year. Does this make sense? Or, hey, I got all this information that we got to go like revisit this a bit. So it's a bit of it's an ongoing process, and it kind of becomes part of sort of the culture of the town that's managing the assets. So this, plan, do, check, act kind of cycle just kind of goes on in forever. That water would have helped me say that word. So, so that's the idea. Next slide, John. And so this graphic here kind of visually shows this concept of risk. So on this left-hand side, the y-axis is the failure probability. So how likely is something going to be problematic for us? And then the consequence of failure on the x-axis is, what happens if something were to fail? And so you get this gradient of, your highest risk infrastructure in the upper right and your lowest risk on the lower left. So it's, to a degree, it's a very academic exercise, but it helps you create a plan for implementing, and bringing your infrastructure to better status. So if we just don't have a lot of good information on the infrastructure, one of the very first steps is like, let's get that information, right? And then we'll put a plan together. Next slide. So this zooms a little bit into the sewer system, I think, because we've been talking mostly about the sewer system today. But, based on age of the pipe and, maybe we do have some specific information about condition of pipe, we've identified high priorities. So about 11% of the linear footage of the pipe we put as this high priority. That doesn't mean that we're going to go next year and we're just going to replace 11% of the pipe, because we have to look at it first. And this could be sort of all over town, like it could be different neighborhoods and things like that. So we've identified this linear footage. And then in this sort of like medium high priority, about 38% of the system was mean high priority. So that was still, older assets. But maybe like if something were to happen to those, like it wouldn't be such a high consequence of failure. So the risk is relatively lower. So that's just kind of like how this pie chart goes. I mean, just in the last 7 years, the wedge of pipe that's blue, that's low, has gotten dramatically higher. That's because of the phase one work. We've worked on over 40,000 feet of pipe. That's half of what is in the blue. So, these are the kind of investments that are going to make, a higher percentage of this pie chart blue and really dealing with these risky pipes. As Gino mentioned, the water system, the town has consistently been working on the water system over decades, and it's in really good shape. And so, like, the pie chart would look very different on the water system.
So in theory, when we go through phase two, hopefully, some of the red will get smaller, maybe even some of the green will get smaller, and the blue will get larger.
Yep, exactly. And then some of the drivers for like why something is a high risk, like for this study, we had proximity to the beach, or if it was like in a drainage system that could affect the water quality at the beach, like that was a high priority because that's a huge issue for the town, right? So that becomes something that's a high consequence if that pipe were to be a problem. So because we're focusing on work on the beaches, Fisherman's and King's, a lot of the pipe we're going to rehab is probably in this green, and red wedge already. Next slide, John. Do you guys really want me to go through this? This is a graphic of the CIP from the forthcoming final report, just of the sewer system. And so this lays out a lot of the stuff we've been talking about. So phase two sewer design is ongoing. We've laid out a priority need, which there is no, as far as I know, there's no dedicated fund for it yet. But it should be in the CIP, would be II study. So infiltration and inflow is a major issue in older systems. Every gallon of groundwater that gets into your sewer system, or every gallon of rainwater, goes to Lynn, and the town pays for that. You're basically treating, rain, basically. So that's something that a lot of communities get a lot of benefit out of is doing infiltration, inflow studies. And that is another piece of information to inform sewer rehab. Phase two sewer rehab, so the Kings Beach rehab we've been talking about, so kind of like year over year, spreading those dollars out. Fisherman's Beach rehab, we talked about that. So this long bar that goes out kind of like forever. We have $50,000 a year recommended just for sort of ongoing inspection of the system. And that could be something that just comes out of an operating budget. You don't need an engineer involved. You can just hire a contractor and just get a really good database of condition of the system. And then based on that information, we might go out there and start doing really targeted inspections to find out like how we'll ameliorate these bad conditions of the sewer system. And then beyond Fisherman's, assuming that we find targeted improvements needed, like in like the Phillips Beach area, for example, this line would dedicate to that kind of sewer rehab. So trying to coalesce all of the renewal issues that we are aware of into a CIP so that we can look at spending these dollars. One of the biggest piece of sewer infrastructure the town has, which probably no one thinks about on a daily basis except for Gino, is the Humphrey Street pump station next to the police department. All of the sewer in town goes through that pump station. Used to be a treatment plant in town, and now it pumps it over to Lynn Water and Sewer. The pump station itself, I think, gets inspected. You guys have an operations crew who looks at it all the time. I know you've done some work on it in the past few years. But what we haven't looked at is the force main. So there's a, how many miles long is it, 2.5 mile long force main that conveys the flow from Swampscott into the Lynn gravity system that we don't have any reason to believe that it's going to fail imminently or anything like that, but we do want to look at it, right? So that's something that Gino and I have been talking about is getting some inspection of that force main, just so Gino can sleep better at night. This sort of like hatched area represents like, if there was a need to do a rehab of the force main, you know, what it might be, what it might cost, and things like that. We just don't know today, like, what that would entail with a lot of certainty. You want to add anything on that, Gino?
What's important, I want to add is, look, putting it in a plan is critically important because it sets an expectation that we're going to be not surprised by a pump station that needs improvement because it has a life cycle. We're not going to be surprised about, you know, some of the status of good repair responsibilities we have with pieces of the infrastructure that we know, because corresponding to all these charts and pie charts and graphs are maps. And we can see the town through those maps, and we can see the neighborhoods, and we can see the age of those neighborhoods. And we know as we go through and we start paving roads, for instance, we can combine our road paving program with our rehab program for some of these pipes and get ahead of the water breaks in the middle of the holiday season, or get ahead of the, you know, I&I issues with infrastructure. You know, this asset management focus, you know, was missing from the town for decades. And wrapping this in to a capital plan. Again, it's a plan, it's not a budget. People are going to get tied to these numbers. You know, think less about the numbers, more about the plan. We're going to stay focused on the plan so that we can actually get better and better at being responsible fiduciaries and really addressing these issues. These are your water system, drainage system, and sewer system.
So I have two comments. I'd feel a lot better if we were testing that force main sooner rather than later. And I think, didn't Nahant have a problem with their force main?
Nahant did, yep. And that worried me because they had two catastrophic failures that cost them over $1 million each time to repair, and then they just completed an $11 million project on their force main going down the Linway. What alleviated some of my concerns is we had the contract that was working for them test the end of our main, and the pipe thickness was almost brand new. So now I do sleep a little better at night, but still there is a concern, and I want to address the air relief valves on the high points of the system. But there's always, could be something, because, you know, it's a pipe, it's underground, and one of the issues I think they had over by the clock tower was electrolysis, or some of the current underneath the ground that caused the pipe to rot out, and it's an unknown.
So I look at this, we're not even looking at this until FY '26. And I'm just, shouldn't we be looking at this FY '25, or are you good with FY '26?
FY '26.
Okay, all right, so then I'll forget my comment. Then my next question is, this is the second time we're getting an asset management update. And I think the last time was October. And in October, I had asked, you're giving you're giving us an asset management review, but where is the report? And I was told we would have it shortly. I requested that report November, December, January, February, until the point where I filed a FOIA so that I could finally get a draft. But is this report finished yet, where the public can read this report? What is the final status of this report?
Yeah, we're taking a lot of time just trying to get the, I guess you want to call it the executive summary or the skin of it, like the message of it, exactly where we want it to be. So I've been working a lot with Sean just to get it in the right spot. I mean, the bulk of it is done. It's just really focusing on that first piece. Sean, I don't have anything to add to that.
Yeah, I
That's
think
kinda where we
it's,
are.
What's the ETA on this? I mean,
should be, I think, sometime in the next week. I think we're pretty much done. So this was the update. You know, I think, as Dave mentioned, we wanted to just make sure the numbers were solid. We could trust that, you know, we had a good focus on the assets and, you know.
that's great, because we have a committee that we put together in January, and this is their responsibility, the asset management.
Just one follow-up to Mary Ellen's first comment. If I'm not mistaken, we have $500,000 in the capital plan for
Water main.
Water main.
water main.
Yep,
Is that?
that's on top of the.
Will that
one-
cover the $27,000 for the force main?
$500,000 is for the water main, not the force main,
Okay,
the potable water.
It's for water.
okay. So do we not have the $27,000 allocated anywhere in capital or anything right
No.
now?
We haven't baked this into the capital plan
Okay.
yet, but this will be
Take it
something
out of
that we,
ARPA.
Yeah, let's do it.
I think that's what my request was a while back, was for the 27.5. So it's something like that, I might have to revisit it, to use ARPA money.
I think
And
we
then
went out of order, but I
just-
think that,
It,
that's,
on here, on maintain reliability, pump station improvements.
oh, yeah, yeah.
So pump station improvements start in FY '25, but where is that in the what is that, what's that line item in the capital plan?
We have $200,000 that just came across Sean's desk last week.
yeah, we've applied for some funding through ARPA, state ARPA, and it looks as though we may be getting some state assistance for that. So, you know, we have been seeking state and federal grants for some of these projects, so I will hopefully have some good news to report soon.
Can you, the condition of the pump station on a scale of 1 to 10, how,
The main, well, we have 8 pump stations in town. We have 7 remote, and then the main one on Humphrey Street. Are you referring to the main one or all of them?
main one?
Main one? We're having issues with 2 out of the 3 250 horsepower pumps. They're both being, 2 of them are being rebuilt right now as we speak. So there are concerns, but we do have the money to do that.
Okay.
But there's always going to be maintenance to that building because there's a lot of flow that goes through that building.
I just want to make sure it's a serious focus of ours, and that's where our capital money's going. Some of our capital money's going.
You know, I'm down there on a daily basis these days. I do the inspection daily.
Okay.
We're mandated to do so. Every lift station, pump station we have that pumps over 100,000 gallons per day has to have a daily inspection.
Thanks, Gina.
I think we went to every slide, thankfully.
We did. I don't know if there are more questions or.
It's very good.
I do want to just let folks know, this presentation is up on the town website, so if you go to the town's homepage, you can download a copy of this presentation. Certainly, there's a lot to digest here, but it has been years of effort. You know, we actually have been working on the asset management plan for the last 2 years, 2.5 years. We did get a grant for this asset management report, you know, and look, it was something the town just never had. We didn't have a map. We didn't know the status of repair for any of these systems. Now we do. Now we can take this information, we can start to build a stronger capital plan for that status of good repair. But this was a lot, and, you know, I'm happy to, you know, schedule some additional time to have Dave join us either remotely or in person, and just continue to ask questions and really think critically about how we, you know, get better at managing these responsibilities.
No, and I just think it was a great update. So thank you, John. Thank you, Dave from Kleinfelder, and Gino, certainly thank you as well.
I do acknowledge Chris Bulkley from the Water Sewer Infrastructure Advisory Committee. Great asset to the committee. Just got
Dr.
to know
Bulkley.
Chris recently. Bulkley, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
We sat through this probably to learn.
I did have one question, if it's okay.
Yeah, grab the mic. Yeah.
We took the mic.
Just grab the mic, Chris.
He's good. Oh, it's gone.
I guess this is more of a question for Select Board, but, you know, David, you brought up the idea of, you know, how much money we could save, how much money was previously saved by bundling, and right now we've got the plan to bid out these contracts for Phase 2 into 3 phases. I'm just curious, you know, this obviously reflects my ignorance about municipal finance, but could we just do one big phase and save even more money?
I think we'd be limited on. I think if we put out one $10 million project, we'd be really limiting ourselves to the competition.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. Dave, would you agree with that? Probably only one company that might be able to do that.
Yeah,
I mean, as it stands right now, it's possible, depending on how much, if we get Fisherman's going this year, I mean, still, we've never done even 3.5 million in 1 year, which is what we're now talking about doing. So, just capacity of contractors, et cetera, to actually do that. Is that possible?
Yeah, I guess it's possible. It depends what type of time restraints we put on them. If we drag it out a little longer, then we can continue to do it. If we tell them they have to do it in a finite period of time, then I guess the price is gonna go up more.
Well, Dave promised that we were doing 3.5 a year, so. So there's no wiggle room, Gino.
David, I'm going to have a question, and I don't know what time I should bring it up at, but it's about water testing. So, and I don't know how, so Chris's committee has been having conversations with the Board of Health about the possibility of testing our beaches quite often.
Yeah.
And the estimates on that cost for the first year would be $22,000, and so that also includes a machine that's about $11,000. So that's all in. It would be approximately between $10,000 and $12,000 on soft goods going further out, and then we would be doing it in-house. We don't have that in the budget right now. I don't know at what point, where do we scrape it into the budget? Where do we take that? Do we take it out of ARPA under the public health line item? But when do you want to have that conversation? How do you want to have that conversation?
You can have it now.
Yeah, I'm happy to, I got an email today from the chair of the Infrastructure Committee with some information on that. I copied the Director of Health, and certainly happy to evaluate it. I think, it's just important for us to understand that we statutorily have to test the beaches, and we just want to make sure that, we have some consistency. And, there's just a good standard of care when it comes to the technology. I haven't seen it, but I'm happy to take a look at it. I do think it would be helpful, to address perhaps some misinformation that has been out there about water quality. Unfortunately, Bookface has a lot of misinformation, and I do think, getting more science and getting more data to people that they can trust, especially when it comes to the quality of their health and the quality of health of their family members using these resource areas, that's going to be important. So I'm 100% on board trying to figure out how to do better with that. But I just want to be as careful with that as we should be.
So last year, when the Board of Health tested over in Kings Beach, the area in which we test, and we test once a week, and during the course of the summer, in our testing, there was only 2 days where we actually failed the testing, 2 days. But we closed down the beaches but we closed down the beaches so there's no confusion for people. So we just try to keep it consistent. But we didn't have to close down our section of the beach except for those 2 days. So I think I think many people, I hear, they're concerned that there's enormous amount of bacteria in the water, and, I'm not a scientist, maybe there is, but I think if we're having testing, then people will just have the facts
So
in front of
there's
them.
just some things that, last year we didn't close down Fisherman's Beach. We actually had,
Beach.
I'm sorry, Kings Beach, yes, Kings Beach.
2 days we failed,
yeah.
only 2 days.
Right, and so, the way the state requires us to actually close down, is really, they need 2 consecutive days of failures to actually mandate a closure. And so there's a whole standard of public health responsibilities when it comes to testing. And again, it's the Board of Health and the health director's responsibility to test the water quality, and I want the director of health to really be in the room with this technology. I just think it's important. I think it's important for our, our Board of Health to,
Well, I did
Involved.
attend the Board of Health meeting last night where this was demonstrated, and what became very interesting is that the Board of Health feels as though because they test once a week, they're meeting their obligations. But they have a different threshold, right? They have a different mandate and different threshold than what we might have for public use of the beach or for the infrastructure committee. And I think what was interesting about this technology is it really kind of gives us control locally about doing this. Now, I don't think the plan was 100% baked as far as I was concerned, because like who really is going to do the testing every single day? And I know there's some ideas about who will do that and maybe a little bit from here, a little bit from there. That's got to get worked out if we were to do this, obviously. So we make sure that's really standardized and we can be dependable and all that. But if we had it, then we would know 5 days a week, 7 days a week, exactly what's going on the beach, right? And not guessing or wondering, 1 day a week type of thing. Department of Health, maybe 1 day a week is perfectly fine for their means, but we may have other reasons why we need to know more frequently. And we certainly need to know at different parts of Fisherman's, right, than the one place that's being tested right now. So some expansion, some way. So I do think it's prudent for us to figure out a way, whether it's capital or ARPA or operating or whatever, to find some allocation, because whether or not we do our own testing with this, our own machine, or we're sending it out more frequently, it's going to cost us more. So I think we need to kind of have some allocation to do that.
I agree with everything that has been said here. How about give me a couple of weeks and I'll come back and I'll have a recommendation.
The only problem with that is that we're going to do the warrant and the budget, and I assume tonight at some point.
Yeah.
So,
We can make adjustments up until.
Yeah,
we can,
we're-
but
We have a couple of
it
things.
gets kind of crazier though.
I mean, the budget, just so you know, there are a couple of things that right now we have open enrollment. We have things that are going to change with, selections for healthcare plans. And so, we have a few things that still, are in motion. And so I think we'll have an opportunity here to really address this and just come back and have a good conversation about, giving the town at least a little bit more information about such an important health issue.
Thank you.
If I could interject briefly and just say that if any of the select board or Sean, if you would like to come over and check out the equipment we have for the next 2 weeks, we have about 17 more free tests that we can run. It's been sponsored by the company that sells the equipment. They've given us demo equipment. We've got it over at the DPW yard. So if anybody would like to come down, we can go and pull out some of Stacy's Brook's finest and give it a test, and you can see it for yourself. It's the exact same equipment that's used by the Deer Island lab for all the testing that's done at King's already. So it's literally the same machine, same reagents, sold by the same people, just that we've got one
Just
now.
local, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I did not watch the Board of Health meeting, nor did I attend, so I have a lot of questions, and I don't mean to sound like a naysayer, but because I don't have all the facts, I just will throw them out there. I think whenever it comes forward, there'll be some sort of presentation so we can understand more fully. But whoever is doing the tests, I assume there's some training involved and to make sure that they're consistent and to make sure that they're accurate, right? Because the whole point of bringing it in-house is to have more data available, but if the data is inaccurate or is showing something that is,
So 3 members of Gino's staff have already been trained by the company on how to do this, as well as, I think we had 4 members of the community that were there for the training. So we'll be doing training for anybody who's involved. I think that right now the idea is that testing would be done through a combination of folks from DPW and if we can get volunteers, or certainly if any Board of Health folks would like to be involved. Anybody involved would absolutely be trained. We'll have very clear standard operating procedures and all of that fun stuff.
We have a
So,
testing brigade.
yeah, I think we would need it. And I think, look, it would be wonderful if we did a summer worth of testing and found out that this was way overkill and we don't need to do this again next summer. That would be a fantastic outcome.
Sell our
So
machine.
I don't, throw it up on
well,
eBay.
I think the other thing is just the maintenance of the machine, right? Like,
So maintenance of the
how,
mach-
so understanding how delicate the machine is and if there is some sort of human error that, again, because I don't understand the process yet, so I'm just.
Great question. So actually, the machine comes with a 4-year service contract. If there's ever any problem, they'll come and take a look at it and fix it for us. The company's right up in Maine. They make them in Maine, and so there's no bottleneck in terms of getting a new one. We call them up and they send them to us. In fact, for our demo, they messed up and sent us 2. So, there's plenty of access to both the reagents. There's no sort of restrictions there. In terms of
You
the
just put
durability.
the,
Sorry?
put the water in and it spits out a reading? Like how?
Come on
like,
over
how
to
does it
DPW.
work?
Let's do
Okay.
it. Seriously,
No, only because,
I'm dead serious.
like,
It's-
like,
it's-
from what I understand now, they take a sample, they send it out, they do the testing, the results come back.
Yeah.
But I don't know what the
Yeah,
testing
yeah, yeah, yeah.
is.
So if we have a second, I'd be happy to describe it to you very briefly. So imagine you've got an ice cube tray, and you've got a machine that puts a laminated lid on the ice cube tray. So that's one component of this system. The other component of the system is you've got a jar of water that you've got some bacteria in, and you add to that a powdered substrate, and you sort of mix it in, close the lid, back and forth, dissolve the powder. You pour the liquid into the ice cube tray. You put the lid on it. You slide it through the machine, which seals the lid onto it. The way that this works is that when the bacteria in the sample eat the powder that you put into the tray, they excrete something that glows. And so you take the tray and then you put it under a UV light, and you see how many of the ice cube wells are glowing. And you've got a little table that says you had 3 of the little wells that glowed and 7 of the big wells that glowed, and that means you've got this much
Bacteria.
in your sample. So it's super user-friendly. So to put that in more concrete terms, for the testing that's currently being done on Kings Beach, I believe it's DCR, hires an intern to come and collect water every day during the summer, and the head of the Deer Island lab hires an intern to do the ice cube tray spit. And so it's literally done by summer interns every summer. So I'm quite confident that this is something that essentially anyone could do. We had very good feedback from the training that was done with DPW workers, so they felt pretty confident about it. And I would encourage all of you to come by and we can do some.
Okay.
All right.
Great.
Sounds
Thank
like,
you.
sounds like we'll have a field trip in the coming weeks.
Absolutely, sounds good.
Thank you. Yeah, no, very insightful conversation. So we will move on to an update on fiscal year '24, third quarter town financials. I believe we have the Director of Finance, Amy Sarah, with us this evening.
David, can I ask you a question? Later in the consent agenda, we have about this grant, right? So Dave from Kleinfelder is intimately involved in that as well. I don't know if the board is going to want to dig into it deeply. I actually feel pretty well prepared to respond to questions about it, but if people would prefer to hear it from Dave rather than from me, I just wanted to raise that. Dave, if he needs to stay, he needs to stay. But I was just wondering whether or not people definitely knew that they were going to have very detailed questions, they were going to want the expert to answer or not.
No, understood, understood. Yeah, I didn't have any questions about the MVP grant, Katie or Mary Ellen.
I have not even read the MVP grant because we just got it today.
Well, just so you know, what I sent last week is the exact same thing. This is just a more detailed version of it. It's the exact same grant, same structure, same task, same focus, strategy, everything. We just now have much more detail, especially around the budget. And, I could certainly respond to budget questions later. I don't mean to disrupt the whole flow here.
No, understood, but
Yeah.
yeah, while we have Dave here, I agree.
Should we just take the consent agenda now then?
We can.
Take it out of the
We can
consent agenda.
pull it out
yeah,
of
we can-
that.
We could just address, we can just address the letter of support for the MVP grant.
You want to pull it out of the consent agenda or you want to look at the whole consent?
We can, if there are no questions and we're going to bless this within the consent agenda, I think we can keep it here and move on to third quarter town financials. If not, if there were detailed questions, we do have Dave Peterson from Kleinfelder.
I just have a couple questions, so why don't we just pull it real quick? So basically, with all of so this is the grant, you're playing for this, and basically the cost to the town is going to be what?
About 20.
10%.
It'd be 10%, but your overall dollar amount was,
The town share is $27,000. Yeah, if you go all the way back to after the narrative, and there's a chart, the budget chart. Well, it says page 2 on it, but it's not the first page 2. It's like after you get to page 11, then 1, 2. And so the cash match is our share. There's an in-kind match too, which is town staff time that's been calculated,
How much is that?
21,000
The the town staff is 21,000?
in-kind match.
Okay. Got it right here. And this is a grant for, this isn't CZM, MVP?
No, this is MVP, just I'll do the quick overview, and Dave can step in whenever you want him to, but right, this is MVP. We're also going to apply for CZM, basically the same thing, some little tweaks because of their different criteria. This is all about comprehensively looking at Fisherman's Beach to Eisenman's Beach to Phillips Park, that whole entire area. And the other difference with MVP is that it's not just coastal. Coastal zone management is just coastal. Here, we're kind of inland flooding as well, right? So there's different models, both kind of the sea level rise and storm surge, but there's also kind of inland flooding models and precipitation that are being that are incorporated in this as well.
That get blocked with debris and flooding, you know, it's a life safety issue to residents and access, so lots of serious issues this type of grant can help us address.
So one question I have is, did this grant just come up in the last couple of weeks? Like, we're being asked to approve a grant.
No, this is the one I've been talking about for months. This is
I've
exactly
been
the
talking
same.
about working on a grant, I know, but what I'm
Yes.
saying is, it does seem like it's come, it just seems a little rushed.
We've been talking in detail with multiple chairs of the different committees. I've been giving updates on this every single meeting, I feel like. So we've been like really kind of evolving this. And yes, you know, there's always with grants, there's always a deadline, right? So things start to accelerate, right? So, you know, there's no doubt about that. But, you know, we had conversations with MVP, we had conversations with CZM, we've been back and forth with Dave's team, trying to refine this. They've engaged Woods Hole Group as well for this. You know, there's a lot of different moving pieces to kind of bring this all together. And, you know, I mean, I'm sorry that you all haven't had a chance to read the detail that we got from Kleinfelder today, but I mean, I just have to say, I just feel like really great about this. Who knows if we'll actually win because it's super competitive, but we've got a framework here now that is incredibly thoughtful and thorough as far as I'm concerned, looking at a lot of different options. And so by the end of this, which will take some time, I really think we're going through a really good process. There's a lot of community engagement that's built into this. So, you know, we've got a serious problem, and I think this is a serious response to it.
And then we're gonna be applying, similar to CZM, to the coastal. Is it pretty much the same thing to coastal?
Yes, this is MVP, and then Coastal will come back again with that one to approve that separately. That'll be like within the next few weeks.
Okay.
Did I miss anything critical? Did I mess anything up?
No, you did great.
All right, any questions, comments?
I have a question not about this specific grant, but just about grant review in general. I know we like briefly talked about it in a prior meeting and just figuring out like sort of the efficiency of time, because obviously we're going to talk about this and many other grants going forward. And the potential is we don't even get them, but we've spent 10, 20 minutes maybe on each grant, or maybe not. And I just having a process in place about what the expectation is for reviewing these going forward. Just because there's a real chance for grant applications, Marcy's not here, but she could probably tell us what the over-under is on actually being awarded all the grants that we've applied for. So just want to talk about, you know, efficiency of time. And yes, we absolutely have a fiduciary responsibility to how we're spending the time and what sort of grants are going out there. But at the same time, we're not being asked to spend this money or match this money. It will come back to us, right? Because we don't have a grant, there's no earmark for any funds. And if we were to be awarded the grant, they would have to come back and funds would have to
And
be
then we would
earmarked.
have to, yeah.
Not,
and we would
not
have
in
to
this
accept the
case.
grant.
Just be clear, right? Because on ARPA last week, we actually allocated the 200,000 that you actually have to have them kind of put, for this one, just for this one.
Yeah, but
Okay.
that's because we did it
Yes,
already.
yes.
In another process. But
Yes.
there's a process in place to backstop any funds. It's not like you apply for the grant and then you just get the funding
Yeah,
from us.
correct.
So,
Yeah, so just,
want to think about
no,
that.
no, no, just
Every
in
year?
the discussion about process,
Okay,
Katie, I
so
think that's a
We'll be
good,
applying for these things every single year. CZM and.
Generally,
MVP.
this, actually, we're applying, this one actually runs almost 2 years, this grant here. But
Okay.
generally, yes.
yeah, and just regarding process, you know, it was certainly my intention for this to be included on a consent agenda, so we could review it. We could, you know, we could pull it out if there were questions or anything else, but, you know, we seemed, you know, certainly the town administrator and town staff know what the priorities of the town are. And it's certainly my intention to have this on consent agendas as these items come up. And then we can certainly have a discussion or simply approve as part of the consent agenda
We
regarding the
also have
grants.
a terrific committee
God bless
that's
you.
focused on this too. And again, these are the kind of things that, you know, we've got a committee that's focused on this and we've got committees that are focused on a lot of different grants. I appreciate the board's interest in just being more transparent and making sure that we just publicly talk about some of these activities. I've heard from staff that it's going to give other communities a little bit more of a competitive edge because they're going to learn about all the things that we're doing. And
Yeah,
again,
not worried about
I hear you,
Yeah.
but I do think it's just important for us to talk about how these ultimately are going to affect the town. You know, we've talked about, you know, how little we've invested in climate resiliency. And these are the type of grants that are specifically focused on trying to help communities like Swampscott really think about the future and protect neighborhoods and do the kind of things that are really important in terms of infrastructure and resiliency. And so there's a lot of good work that's happened, but certainly, you know, looking for the board's support for this.
Anything additional?
No, so I'd make a motion to support this grant?
As well as the letter that goes along with it?
Yes, I saw the letter.
I would second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. All right, Ms. Sarah, floor is yours. I don't know if we can't hear her.
Amy, we can't hear you.
Yeah, stand by, please.
This is the letter, just so you know. You don't have to do it now, just.
Thank you. Amy, try speaking now. Can you hear me now? No. Do we need to turn the volume on the television up? No?
What is what?
MVP stand.
Municipal vulnerability preparedness.
Just want to cause chaos. Mayhem.
Mayhem. It did work earlier.
So all your mics are on. We're just gonna see if we can, figure out what's going on.
Do you want to slide it?
Amy, I don't know if you can hear me, but maybe I can hack you into the meeting.
Well, everyone who's on Teams could hear me.
All right.
So it's just an issue in your room because I could hear the guy John as well.
No, Sean's put her on speakerphone.
Yeah, I think this can,
Sean, can you turn the speakerphone off for 1 second?
Just do this next time, this update next time.
Or
She's on,
Yeah, Amy, try to unmute yourself, please.
Or we can do it, like, it was working with the speakerphones.
Ryan, can you unmute?
Amy, can
Oh,
you try talking?
Nope.
No.
No. Look, I'm also happy getting having this at our May
table it.
meeting. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, Amy, we'll
Oh,
table
Amy's
it.
good with it.
No, yeah.
We're gonna have the same problem with Pete. It's gonna be the same problem, and
Yeah, something's
Pete is
going on with-
reviewing the warrant,
Something's going on
so.
with Teams.
Not that I don't wanna table Amy,
Okay.
but,
No, understood.
maybe dial Pete in.
Well,
Maybe it'll work from
Necessity.
Pete's.
You know, we shouldn't turn up the volume on the TV.
you can try the speakerphone, if that was working,
That wasn't really working.
was it?
I could hear her.
Could you hear it?
Yeah.
I couldn't hear it.
Maybe put it more in the middle.
Okay, would you like me
On a
to try the
group call.
speakerphone?
Let's ask Pete. Can you hear us, Pete? Can you come off mute? Looks like he can hear us. Oh,
He can hear us, but we are.
We
Yeah,
can't hear you.
We can't hear you, though. Same problem.
All right.
Amy's making fun of us now. They're all laughing at us. Haha.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
And people, can't beat them signing off and signing back in because it's happening to all of them, right? So-
No. So look, I would recommend that we hold off on the Q3 financial report from Amy. We do need to attempt to close the warrant this evening. If for whatever reason we cannot close the warrant, I would want to have an all virtual meeting on Monday perhaps, but I think we can do it tonight.
How far does Pete live?
Salem.
Would you like me to give him a call?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Hey, do you mind, I'm gonna put you on speakerphone so you can, all right, I may have to turn the volume down, hold on one second.
Hey, Pete.
Hi, Pete.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. I will share my screen then.
Yes, please.
I just have a quick question.
Go ahead.
Can people watching hear him?
Yeah.
Yes.
They can.
Yes.
It's weird, it's like not in here, but it's like on Teams, you can hear them fine.
Great, okay.
I used to be on a cable committee.
Good to know.
That's great. Continue, Pete.
Okay. All right. So, walking through the various articles, I'm going to get you to Article 1. Actually, Article 2. So there are a number of articles that we need the select board to vote on your recommendation or whether you are going to make a report at town meeting. So the first one is Article 2, which is the approval of bills for prior fiscal years.
Okay, it looks like Finance Committee approved it last night. Everything's finalized here, so we're in a position, we've kind of scrutinized this before.
Yep.
So I would at least start off by making a motion for us to recommend this with favorable action.
So there's a new line item in here. The Greater Boston Police Council, that's not a new line item?
No, that's consistent from the warrant that was distributed on the 17th, Mary Ellen.
Okay. I must be looking at a warrant from before that.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I made a motion for favorable action on paying our bills from prior years.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Article 3?
The next article is Article 3. This is the FY25 proposed operating budget. FinCom did review this and plans to report on the article at town meeting.
Typically, the board does the same thing. You know, there may be a few changes, as I outlined earlier, and, you know, the next couple of weeks, it'll give us a chance to get some additional
Make some
information.
adjustments.
Healthcare, yes.
I think that's a good idea.
So we don't need to spend
gonna
time
put-
scrutinizing tonight?
Okay, report at town meeting. Article 4.
The next article is Article 4, which is the utility fund. Hold on one second. Here we go. Utility Stabilization Reserve Fund.
So I have reached out to the school business manager and the superintendent, and our director of finance have worked out a MOU that's going to be specific about the utility for the new school. And so, you know, we're going to have an MOU similar to the MOU we have with the special education stabilization account. And this would allow us to ensure that, you know, we have some, you know, control over how these dollars are going to be allocated. But, you know, we're going to be careful and certainly expect that I'll have language next week. As I've mentioned previously, these are best practice type of stabilization funds. They do help us, you know, make sure that our operating budgets are sound, but for line items that frankly fluctuate with the market or have conditions that, you know, we have a new school and we don't know exactly how that new school is going to use energy, this, you know, will help support that peace of mind that we're not short shifting a budget.
So, can we just make sure in the MOU that there's some sort of trigger to dissolve the account if it's meant for sort of a temporary leveling of the utilities for the school? I totally support the idea of there being some fluctuation in the first couple of years while solar comes on and all that kind of, but if the utilities sort of level out consistently for 2 school years or something like that, then maybe we trigger the.
That's a great idea, Katie. I think sunsetting some of these through an MOU that says that, you know, every year the select board or the school committee or the town administrator and superintendent all have to sign an MOU to say that, you know, these are funds that still serve a fiduciary purpose. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
So the
I'm sorry, I have Amy, she needs to chime in. Amy, you're on speaker.
Sticker close to the mic.
Yep.
Right here,
yep.
please.
Okay.
We're gonna put you next to the microphone.
Okay, go ahead, Amy.
If you vote a stabilization or a reserve fund, it has to maintain for at least 3 years before you can rescind the vote.
30 years?
3.
3
3.
Oh, okay.
So we would have a sunset provision that could be no earlier than June 30 of 27.
Correct.
Okay.
Which I think is plausible for this
Yeah.
anyways, right? I don't think that's.
Yeah, if we want to even sunset it. But the understanding is that the schools are forecasting a shortage of $200,000 in their utility bill. And it is, according to the business manager, it is their feeling that once the solar comes online, which should be in the first 12 months, they will not have that shortage.
That's correct.
That's Max's understanding, yes.
Did she say?
That's right.
So
That's max.
So FinCom has not taken action on this article, Amy?
FinCom decided not to vote on this because they wanted to see the MOU before they took a position.
Okay.
They were in favor of the fund in concept, they just wanted to see the parameters around it.
Okay, and I think that's probably the same consensus of us as well. Okay,
Right?
all right, so we'll report at town meeting.
Okay, the next 2 articles are essentially in tandem. This has to do with the opioid settlement. The first article, Article 5, is to rescind the opioid settlement special purpose fund, with Article 6 being transferring that money that was then put into free cash now into an opioid special reserve fund.
So I'd make a motion for the select board to report favorable action on both of these, if we need to do them separately, but
I second that motion.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
I do have to step back a second. Article 4, we do not have a sponsor for that article.
The town administrator.
Why don't we just have the sponsor as the select board?
Okay, have it be the select board.
Select board?
Sure.
Okay. Same thing is true for Article 5.
Select board,
The opioid?
yeah.
eventually we'll have to pick one of us, right, to kind of go up there and.
Yeah.
We will have to go up and,
Yeah, we do that
I
just
think Mary Ellen's
before.
pretty excited about all three of these, so I mean, maybe you want to take.
I have a lot of history of going up there. Famous for the marijuana request a few years ago.
Okay.
some.
That's kind of in line then, the opioid, the marijuana, it's kind of.
All right, moving on.
So Article 7 is the transfer of WaterX Enterprise Fund retained earnings, sum of $130,000.
Again,
Can I just make a comment, though? That if Article 5 is sponsored by the town administrator, then I would think maybe Article 6 should also, Article 6 is sponsored by the town administrator, or maybe Article 5 should be as well. Just have it consistent, if you're gonna take them together.
If Mary Ellen would like the board
The
to
only-
sponsor any of these articles,
I always prefer that the select board is sponsoring,
Okay, then,
the select board's warrant.
should the select board not then sponsor Article 6?
She wanted 4, 5, and 6.
So you want to, okay, I'm sorry. I just
that's
read that
fine.
it was already sponsored by the town administrator, so you're
We're
making
changing
a
that
change
to select
the
board.
Select board.
Ah,
Apologies.
okay. All right, Article 7.
Did the finance committee vote on this?
They recommended favorable action.
Yes.
So I'd like to make a motion vote favorable action.
Second.
All in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Article 8 is approving the transfer of Sewer Enterprise Fund retained earnings, sum of $72,000.
Finance committee
Let's make a
recommended
motion.
favorable action.
Let's make a motion, I make a motion to approve Article 8.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Article 9, this is the approving transfer of fee cash for Special Education Reserve Fund, transferring of $200,000. We need a sponsorship as well as the select board's recommendation.
You should
I just have a quick question on this. The finance committee is recommending favorable action on this, but
That's
do we happen
correct.
to know, do we happen to know the dollar status on what that stabilization fund is right now? And what they're gonna forecast out? It's not gonna change my vote. I just wanna know if we could have the information.
we can get that. Amy, do you have that offhand?
Mary Ellen, so far they have not expended any money from this fund. Last I spoke with Cheryl at the school, she said at most, she's projecting 172,000 of usage from the 350 that was voted last year.
Okay, I think she's using the, that asset, what is it? There's a school that needed a new UV system or some type of a system, a capital issue, and she's gonna use that money out of the fund so that she'll get reimbursed later on, or a percentage reimbursed later on?
Do you mean the special assessment that they were,
Yeah.
they were able to figure that out within their operating budget?
Okay. All right, so you're saying you don't think they've spent anything out of there, or what's the dollar amount you said?
As of this moment, they have not spent anything out of there. For FY '24, Cheryl was saying that they anticipate about 172,000 of usage from there this year, out of the 350 that was already voted.
Okay, great, thank you.
So I would recommend favorable action. I would make a motion, select board report favorable action on this.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And will this be, who's going to be sponsoring this? Is this the finance committee?
I think it sounds like the select board.
It's right here, the select board sponsoring this.
Oh, that wasn't in mine.
Or should it not feel that?
It's not in this one.
Sponsored by, oh, I see, select board.
Ah. Article 10.
This is amending the general bylaws to create the Andrews Chapel revolving fund and giving it a spending limit of $25,000.
So I make a motion that the select board recommends favorable action?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. 11.
This is also amending the general bylaws specifically to the Historical Commission revolving fund and amending the fiscal year spending limit from $5,000 to $25,000.
So I recommend the select board make favorable action on the article?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Spoken with gas. Article 12.
Article 12, adoption of CPA.
So I will say, I don't know if I reported on this the last time. I think a couple of us were on the meeting with the Finance Committee. I'm trying to think about the order of things here. So the Finance Committee did take a position, I wasn't on last night, but they did report favorable action on this. We had a detailed discussion with them about the exemptions and the surcharge level, and they came around to unanimous support for the 1.5% that we discussed here. If anyone else was on at that point, I gave them a lot of encouragement to make sure that they were very, very comfortable with it. And that's where they kind of landed.
I just have a question about the language of the article. So do we
Yes.
need to modify the language? I know in the comment it says 1.5, but not in the article itself. It just says an amount not to
That's a good
exceed
pickup.
3%.
Yeah.
So we have to modify that to say of 1.5% of taxes assessed.
So the reason being is the article language is the standard language, and you would set that 1.5 based on the motion.
What?
What? Say that again, Pete?
Yeah, that's,
Why-
Pete, did you get that from town council? Because I ran the version with 1.5 in there past the guys that run these community preservation things all across the state, and they said they thought the 1.5 should be right in.
I think you're right, Doug, and I think if the board is comfortable, we'll,
Thank you for playing, Pete, sorry.
Yeah. I know. That means that we've got low power, get 10%, so I don't know if we're,
So we just want to amend that motion to be 1.5%?
Let's hear from
Well, I
Pete.
guess I want to
Yeah.
amend the motion to be whatever is required to have 1.5%
Right. And
pass.
let's let Pete, is there a reason did you, that town council, or where are you getting the?
I was provided the information today that the language in the article is based on standard, which is not to exceed, and that that your motion can then specify the explicit, which is why the language in the article says not to exceed 3%, which is the maximum allowed, but we would by motion set it at 1.5. But we can certainly verify with council.
let's do
Yeah,
1.5.
so I
Please do. We don't
I
need
would
people getting
assume-
more
yeah,
upset
yeah,
than-
yeah.
No, I agree.
I think it,
I
look,
would assume that that what Pete is saying may not be incorrect, but also if we just set the percentage in the article, that is also not incorrect, and that is.
sounds
more
like there's a motion to set it at 1.5.
Yes, that's what I would like to
And
do.
we'll report back if town council says that somehow this language statutorily has to stay as it is printed. I don't
All right, so we're just going to
believe
come
that.
back to this one?
Well, I think we can vote.
Well, I think we can vote
support
to-
it.
to-
Oh, good.
With the 1.5 in,
Let's
right?
vote
And
to
then,
say that an amount
All right.
of 1.5,
Not to
take the
exceed.
not to exceed 3% out, and
Yeah.
then
An amount not to exceed 1.5%.
no, I would just say an amount
Amount
of 1.5.
Correct.
Yeah, and take the not to exceed part out.
Well,
And then I would motion to recommend the select board's favorable action on the article as amended.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, and I would also just recommend that this is sponsored by the select board, right?
Yeah.
We're not going to let the town administrator take any credit for that at all.
Look, you can have it all.
Article 13, we do have,
Bob Powell here.
we have Bob Powell here from the retirement board.
He's still awake.
Vice Chair of the Retirement Board. Mr. Powell?
That's you.
The floor is yours.
You're on.
The moment you've been waiting for, Bob.
I'm going to stay here this time.
That'd be nice.
Yeah.
So first off, I want to acknowledge Peter Spelios' service to the Select Board and to the town, a decade of service, a laundry list of accomplishments, rail trail, new school, Hawthorne, Glover Properties, street lights, beach stickers, on and on and on. There'll be a laundry list, I'm sure, at town meeting where he'll get credit for that and much more. I can't say that I heard him say this directly, but he is presumed to have said, with respect to town issues, that it's hard to say yes, it's easy to say no. And I think it's a great saying, even if he didn't say it, because he was more often than not saying, yes, how about, what if, than no, it can't be done. And rather than ruling things out on the face of it, he always seemed to think about the ways that things could be done. So kudos to Peter, and he will be missed. I think Andrew's Chapel is spelled without the apostrophe, by the way.
Okay.
It's in the warrant, right?
It is. We can fix it, though.
Sorry?
It's a scrivener's error. and
Correct.
I'm glad you pointed it
It's
out.
the editor in me.
Yes, if you have any other, please send them along. We always need a good proofreader.
All right. Anyway, so just by way of background, Bob Powell, Precinct 4, town meeting member, Chair of the Council on Aging, board member of the Retirement Board, co-chair of the Swampscott for All Ages Committee, and soon to be a member of the Master Plan Committee. With regard to the motion, I think, let me just sort of preface my comments by saying I think today you could obviously vote to not include this in the warrant. You could vote at town meeting to indefinite postponement. We could go to town meeting and have it presented and have it pass or fail. And ultimately, if you vote to not include it in the warrant, or if it fails at town meeting, I think, we'll go back to the drawing board. We could go back and spend 12 or 13 months thinking about ways to help these retirees. 60 of them are below 14,000 at the moment. In your packet, I have from 2020, the presentation I gave at town meeting where we voted to increase this COLA base from 13 to 14,000. And at that meeting, we, with cooperation from FinCom, we identified 3 triggers to increase the COLA base for future increases. And I think it's in the back of the packet, and it starts out by saying April 24th, 2020. It's all the way in back. The front is just sort of prelude, just for posterity, so that you have, for those of you who may not have been at town meeting then or on the select board, that was what was presented in terms of what the triggers would be. So Doug, if you go all the way back, yep.
Trigger 1?
Trigger 1. So back in 2020 with FinCom, we had agreed.
Does everyone, make sure everyone has that, Bob? Is everyone?
Yeah, so it would be
It's
trigger
like
1.
3 or 4 pages from the
Yeah,
back.
it's like all the way in back.
Yep.
Separate, yeah.
So what we had agreed was that there would be 3 triggers to request, to come back to town meeting and request a COLA base. One was a COLA base comparison. How do we stack up relative to the other 104 towns and cities and entities within the Massachusetts retirement system in terms of COLA bases? And what we said was that if Swampscott fell below the average, that would be trigger 1. So at the moment, we're now at 14,000, and we're below the PEREC universe. 53 systems are above 15,000, and 51 are below. It's a small difference, but it's a trigger. The second trigger was how is inflation affecting the retirees? And since 2021, if you were at a base rate of 14,000, inflation would be, at the current rate of inflation over those past few years, $16,716 would be what would be required to be the equivalent of what you needed in 2021 to spend. Over the past few years, we annually give typically our retirees a COLA increase of 3%. So in 2021, if you were at 14,000, you would get a 3% increase. And so from January 2021 to April 2024, what you would be now receiving would be 15,398, which is below what you would need to spend the near equivalent amount in 2021. So That's trigger 2, that's a green light. And then trigger 3 was, how are we with our funded status? And if you can notice, from 2017 through 2023, our last report, we've moved from 53% funded status all the way up to 70%. So we're moving in a positive direction. Each and every year, we're moving up about not quite 10 percentage points, but we're moving in a positive direction. And we're on track at the moment to be fully funded in 2031. And then the last thing I'll mention is our current funding schedule, which is on the last slide page, was if we don't have an exact amount, in order to get an exact amount, we'd have to go back to our actuary, to Siegel, and ask them to do a study at probably a cost of around $15,000. So the number I have here is an estimate, which is if we were to increase the COLA base from 14,000 to 16,000, that would increase the ADC, the amount of money that the town has to contribute to the pension, by approximately $1 million per annum. And ultimately, what we would need to do to get the exact number is to do a study with Siegel to find out what the exact actual number would be and what the funding schedule would be. So so in essence, that would, if we move from $14,000 to $16,000, the ADC would increase from, say, in fiscal '25, from 6.6 million to 7.6 million.
Should I ask, wait till you're
No,
done?
I'm done. That was short and sweet.
That seems like a lot of money. I mean, we got 200 people that are, 250 people in the system, you say 60 or something would be
60 or
affected by
14,
this?
roughly 60 or 14,000 and below. So
How that amounts to $1 million.
A year for the next 6 years.
well, it's roughly, for every 1,000 you raise it, and Amy's still online, is she not?
She is.
I'm still here.
So Amy, right, 500,000 for every 1,000 we raise it?
Yeah, that was what we were roughly quoted before, is for every 1,000 we raise the COLA base, it will add $500,000 to the unfunded liability.
Got it. Bob, has there been any discussion about the extension of the schedule? So you're looking at, it looks like this is fully funded, pension's fully funded by 2031. Has there been any study or discussion of extending that out beyond 2031 to help smooth this out on the town side?
So we've had discussions, we've not asked Siegel to do that study, partly because the previous FinCom, when Jill Sullivan was there the last time we went through this, there was a request that we keep the funding schedule as is. So 2031 sort of became our North Star. I think there are various things that we could do to make this kind of COLA base increase palatable. We could increase the funding schedule. We could use free cash to pay down some of the debt. We could increase our discount rate, which I'd rather not do. And there are mechanisms, right? There are levers we can move to maybe make this more palatable. Right now, PEREC recommends that we increase the amount that you fund by 3 to 5% per year. It's at 5% right now. Obviously, if you went to $7.6 million, it would be, I didn't do the math, but it would be considerably more than 5%.
So the good news is there's a bunch of little levers here. We've got a tight budget, and to kind of think about like how we fit $1 million worth of additional costs into a line that is growing significantly every year is tough. I've asked the retirement board over the last few years to consider extending out the schedule just because of the burden that this generation pays for all the other generations that just didn't chip in enough. I mean, this means that, our budget is so much tighter because of these obligations. And I appreciate the prior finance committee's fiduciary. They don't want to, extend out a cost to fund the schedule, but at what cost do we pay not to have some additional flexibility with our operating budget? I mean, we could have more, resiliency professionals. We could have more, public health support more senior center staff. I mean, there's so many things that we could have more of if we didn't have millions of dollars worth of obligations. Bob, I appreciate the advocacy. I appreciate the service that our public servants have given the town and given local government. It's important that we take care of them. I don't want you to hear me as thinking that there's no way that we can increase this. I just think this comes late, and it doesn't give us a chance to do what we have done over the last few years as we've taken Swampscott from a AA- community to a AAA community, and really spend the time to really figure out how to do this in the most careful way. I would like to see this increased. I would like to see it increased in a way that really helps support some of those broader fiduciary responsibilities that we've demonstrated. I want to get to yes. I hope the board members also, feel the same way. I worry that, moving forward right now with this, without really doing all the homework would be pretty challenging.
Yeah, I think I agree with everything Sean just said. I want to go back to the $1 million to make sure I'm kind of really thinking about it right. Should we be taking that $1 million and dividing it by whatever the 250, 260 people are? 'Cause everyone will get the bump. Everyone will benefit from this, or just the 60 people?
Well, it'll be slightly more than, so the way it works,
Yeah.
Doug, is every of those 260 people, each and every year when there's a COLA increase, it's only on the COLA base amount.
So they all
let's say
benefit.
your pension was
Everyone
$100,000.
benefits. You just don't benefit on the whole
You
pension.
benefit on the 14,000,
Yeah, okay.
right? But if you're below 14,000, you benefit greatly, right? Because that 3% matters more than it does to the person who has a pension of 100,000, let's say. So what we'd be doing ultimately is increasing the number of retirees who benefit from the COLA increases per annum.
So then, make sure I'm not going astray here. Is it right to say if it's going to increase the ADC by $1 million, that you really do divide it by the 250, 260 people, and everyone would be getting like a $4,000 bump in?
No. Everyone would get a bump, so everyone would get a bump on the 16,000. But the people below 16,000 will get a 3% bump on whatever their pension is. So 3% on 10,000, let's say, versus
But if it's $1
3%
million,
on 100,000, or 3% on the 16,000 for the person who has a $100,000 pension.
So Bob, if I can jump in, I think the confusion comes in with the $1 million gets added to the end of the funding schedule. So it's
Yeah,
kind
I'm
of,
sorry. Thank you, Amy. I appreciate that. Yeah,
it's
sorry.
tacked on at the back. So by the time you get there, it'll be $1 million, not.
Not
different.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Total difference,
Thank
not
you,
annual.
Thank you, Amy.
Okay.
6 years from now, $1 million.
Yeah, that's why we need to do the actual study with Siegel.
Yeah.
Okay,
So-
all right, that's much better.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think that somewhat addresses, maybe you realize that, Sean, but.
I did. I'm thinking about the operating budget, but Amy, obviously, I always appreciate that clarity. I think there's a path to success here, and I think it has to do with like a little bit of flexibility. I
Yes.
think, extending the funding schedule by a couple of years
Yes.
dramatically help our dramatically. I can't stress how much $1 million would mean to if it went the other way. I can't tell you how difficult it is to squeeze this budget every year to try to meet a 2% and literally every year just try to figure out what do we have to defer. And so if there is a way for us to sit down as a financial team and find a way to yes, let's do it.
Yeah.
Because I think the discount rate, all these different things, like I know nobody likes to talk about it, but interest rates are soaring right now comparatively to where we were 5 years ago. We're generating, our schedule is much better today than it has ever been in terms of, addressing some of these long-term responsibilities. And so I think we could come back to the board and share a perspective that says, hey, look, there's a path here that is financially in everybody's best interest.
Do you have to have the report from the actuary to really have super detailed. I'm just-
I have their most recent report we can share with you. I don't have it in front of me.
The only, well, I'm just asking because if the timing looks like, if it looks like this timing is not the right timing, what I want to know is, at what point do we start to address this? I mean, and do you have to bring in the actuary, do you bring in the actuary in December? Do we start having this? Because in order to implement this right now, it would be, I think it would be a budget buster, wouldn't it?
You're asking me if it's a budget buster?
I don't like to ask questions I know the answer to. It will be a budget buster, but I'm just trying to find out what the timing.
I'd say the moment you vote on whether to include this in the article or not is the moment we start to roll up our sleeves and start trying to figure out how to get to a place where we increase the number of people who benefit from the COLA base.
Wait, two things there. I actually don't think, that, maybe I'm again going to be wrong, but the $1 million is getting added to the end of the funding schedule. This isn't actually doing this, if I understand correctly, actually doesn't necessarily change anything in terms of the FY25 operating budget. That number's already set with your 5% schedule,
Right,
right?
yeah, that's correct.
So,
Amy, you can confirm that.
Yeah, we have compare, yeah. We get this number from the state.
Right.
and-
So the number,
But then it will be adjusted. They'll run a different schedule based on the increase.
So it won't be this year, but every other year will be different.
Correct.
absolutely,
And then
We'll take a share of
maybe
that.
more years,
right,
if that's the track we go down.
That's right.
yeah.
Yeah, the other, you know, again, I'd hate being negative here, but I don't want to do what folks did to us to more folks. So that is my heartache over extending the funding schedule. I know you're not talking about a decade of extension or anything like drastic, but I just really want to understand sort of what that nice balance is between having a little extra room to do some of these things and pushing the burden on. Sometimes you just have to say, we can't do those things because we have an obligation and we're fiduciaries and we have to bite the bullet and the budget has to be tight until we can figure it out. I'm not saying that's necessarily the case here because I just don't have necessarily all the data. If we increased the COLA and we had moved it, bumped it 2-3 years, what would that look like? To me, I think this is a little cart before the horse, and I actually think maybe we should have that information first so that we can make the best educated decision on two things running in parallel. One, whatever the COLA bump may become, and two, whatever the unfunded the date becomes based on that bump. To me, I think to look at them separately, I don't know, it necessarily makes the most sense.
Katie, I think that makes perfect sense. I think historically, when we did this previously, we worked together and we developed a presentation, for the finance committee and the board, and we got comfortable with the numbers, and we did talk about what triggers this. Let's come up with a metric. And we're at a point now where we actually should do that. It just came at a little bit of a surprise through the budget process, and I think it came late. And so I think, it gives us a chance to sit down tomorrow and just start working with the retirement board and saying, hey, look, let's go and let's model this. Let's get some of these numbers and let's get a sense of, what is going to be the annual contribution for the town over the next few years if we increase it by 1,000 or 2, or if we increase it incrementally over the next few years. There's any number of variations that we could look at, including the discount. Like we can use a couple of different levers and just come back and have this conversation so that everybody can understand how we're balancing these fiduciary responsibilities. I also think one of the most important things that we do, and we've done this so well over the last few years, is just take a look at the universe. Where are the other communities that we actually benchmark against and get a sense of are any other communities extending their schedule a little bit to help balance their municipal priorities a little bit more fairly. To me, it's all about balance. Everybody, we have to pay our bills, we have to take care of our responsibilities, and we have to be good stewards, but we also deserve to balance some of these priorities, and that's what we're moving towards. We're trying to balance it. We're not trying to knee-jerk our way through, one issue to another. We're trying to get to a steady place.
Right, and there's nothing magical about 2031, right? I mean, it's a relatively arbitrary number, right? I mean,
Well, it's arbitrary and yeah, I mean,
there's
you
nothing
could call it arbitrary, right? I mean,
inherently better about 2031 than 2030 or 2032, right?
I mean, I'll speak
Big
as a
capital project that
I'll speak as a
fit in
non,
that spot, though.
I'll speak as a non-retirement board member for a second, right? Let's just say, for example, you do extend it to 2032 or 2033. So instead of having a $6.6 million check you have to send to us, it goes down to $6 million, but you've now extended that by 2 years. So you're just paying the bill for a longer period of time.
That's right.
And you're delaying, in my mind, again, not as a retirement board member, as a private citizen, and as a taxpayer, you're delaying the time that it maybe takes to start paying down OPEB,
Yeah.
for instance.
That's fine, that's going to take till 2050 something,
Right,
so-
We're
right.
paying as we
yeah,
go, though,
gotta
so,
stop.
so we're paying everything as we go.
Of course, yes.
At some point, we've got all these pipes that we got to take care of. We got all these, unmet, service needs and other things. There's so many things that have to compete with this. And just to see this without seeing all those other things, I think, puts us at a little bit of a disadvantage.
I mean, I would add one thing, people sometimes accuse previous generations for this problem, but it really, for many years, this system, all the systems in Massachusetts were pay-as-you-go. And it wasn't only until somewhat recently that we began to having to pay down the unfunded liability as opposed to being a pay-as-you-go. So I personally don't blame the previous generations. Were not at fault.
The rules changed.
The rules changed.
Yeah.
The state
And
mandated.
every town had to catch up. It's not a generational problem from my perspective.
I just want to make sure that you feel, Sean said, like, timing-wise, this kind of information came in, at maybe not necessarily like the ideal time.
Yep,
Do you
fair.
feel like that's fair? It's not like we've had this information and we've been sitting on it or anything like that? Like, it's true that this is the first time I'm seeing this right now.
And I gave it to you.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, okay. Just wanted to make sure that there wasn't any.
Yeah, I was
that
complying
anyone
with,
that's not here wouldn't feel like, hey, wait a minute, we told you about this 2 months
No,
ago.
no,
and
no. I mean, we're complying with the request to come
Well-
before the board.
But the retirement board did have, I think there are members of the retirement board that feel that they've been talking about this for a while. This is an issue. They came to us in the fall and said we had an opportunity to increase the COLA because the state said every community could increase the COLA. So there are members of the retirement board feel like, come on, we've been talking about this year in and year out, and we need some help, and we need to work together.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, there
And
was some disappointment on the part of the board where we did have the opportunity, because of COVID, to add an additional 5% on a one-time basis, which was voted down by the select board.
And I know I distinctly remember saying that if we're going to talk about these things, which I wholeheartedly support, getting up to the 16,000, we need to pair it with some extension of the time frame. So, at least I gave that feedback. I think other people gave that feedback at that time too. But the only thing that came back was the increase to 16,000. So I do really feel like, I think what Sean said, that we really do need to have this two different parts. I think Katie said that, maybe we're all saying the same thing. We do need to have a little bit of give and take to make this work. But
I
hopefully
would
we will.
ask the town administrator and the select board if there is cost involved in going back to Siegel to get all these manipulations, that maybe there's a shared cost. Speaking not on behalf of the retirement board, because I don't have the authority at the moment, but I think that's probably what they would say is if there's significant costs, if there's a way to share the burden of doing all these, runs. You don't have to answer now.
Bob, here's what I want to say.
That's very good.
We didn't get a chance to do our third quarter update, so I do want to say, Bob, you're one of the best people that we have to work with. You're a brilliant fiduciary. I appreciate your advocacy for our retirees. I would meet with you or the retirement board at any point and really go over some of the fiduciary responsibilities we share. If we can find a way to partner, certainly I'm open to that. We have a tight budget. We're getting to the end of the fiscal year. Sometimes, we've had hundreds of thousands of dollars in tailings. Sometimes we're we're bumping right up to the end of it. We're in a tight position this year, so I don't know exactly, what we can do, but I want to figure out a path to yes. And I do think that there are a number of models that we can just put on a piece of paper before we get to the actuaries that can help us kind of get a sense of, if we were to charge an actuary with modeling a few things, what would we like them to do? And I'm happy to schedule something next week and go over that. Because I know Amy has some thoughts about this as well, and Patrick, our treasurer, and so we could get a big cup of coffee and work through it.
Yeah, I mean, before we go to the actuary, I mean, they charge divorce lawyer rates, so.
I understand. That's why I want to sit down and I want to model it out first and get consensus and say, what do you think we should actually ask them to do? And then we can come back to the board and get a sense if that makes sense to the board, maybe makes sense to the retirement board, and see where that analysis takes us.
Yeah, I can tell you one last thing about extending the funding schedule. There's difference of opinion on the board. There's probably no desire to extend it to the maximum allowed, which is
Agreed.
2040 or so, because that
42.
then, sorry?
2042.
Right, the maximum allowed, whatever that is it gives us no flexibility at that point to do any, it just reduces our levers.
Understood?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm just looking for a little room.
Do we,
So
Given that,
I'll make a motion to remove this article from the warrant. Oh, sorry, no?
Okay, you can make a motion, then we could discuss it.
Okay, great. So I make a motion to remove Article 13 from the warrant.
I will second it just to get to discussion.
Do it.
So, yeah.
So I'm not comfortable removing, what is the feeling of the retirement board? I'm guessing they want it in the warrant so that there could be a discussion. I mean, there's two things I'm thinking here is, I'm not comfortable taking an article out, especially before the finance committee reviews this. I would rather hear the finance committee's opinion. I'm not in a position where I would support spending, doing this. However, my concerns are not having this out there for town meeting to see and any kind of conversations. That's my concern there. And I would like to hear what the opinion of the finance committee.
Do you feel like there's enough detail for the finance committee to have an opinion, though? That's what I just think we're not there yet. And until some of those pre-models, we'll call them, not actuary models, but some of these pre-models are run, then there would actually be something for finance committee to have an opinion on. But right now, there's just not a lot of meat to this. It's sort of an idea, albeit maybe a great idea, but we just don't understand the streets going down to the idea, right? We don't know how we're gonna get there. So to me, that's really what's missing here, and that's why I would vote to just take it out until we could get some of that meat back on the bones, so that then finance committee and town meeting would have the details of how we're gonna go about doing this and how it's going to affect the liability going forward and what other levers we're pulling to pay for this. And it's, right now, it just feels like we've got this idea.
I have a thought to address, because I have the same concern that you're expressing, I think. I feel hesitant to take it out, but I do feel like, I think we're all kind of on the same page that this isn't ripe for us. And maybe, I don't know when the next retirement board meeting is. I don't know if you want to take that information back to the retirement board, and, we want to close the warrant tonight.
Yeah, we want, yeah.
Yeah.
Never mind.
We
Yeah,
won't
I mean,
be meeting until the end of May after the town meeting, if I'm
What was the
mistaken.
feeling of retirement?
We
board?
never took a vote on that, Mary Ellen, and I would be, if we did, it would be maybe, I don't know what it would be. We never
We
talked
didn't
about
formally
it.
vote,
And
we
Amy,
just
maybe
did a
you
straw
could just
poll.
chime in.
I'm confident.
Sorry, what was that, Amy?
I said we didn't formally vote, we just did a straw poll of everyone's positions.
Amy, what is your opinion on this? I mean, I'm confident if I'm a betting person, I'm gonna bet that the finance committee is not gonna vote favorable action on this because of the lack of financial information that they're gonna have at this time.
Well, we asked,
The finance committee commented that they did not feel like they had sufficient runway to even opine on this,
Right.
and that there wasn't sufficient time for them to even get the information to make a thoughtful decision before town meeting.
We were also, my guess is we're at a two-night town meeting already, and, you know, I appreciate, Mary Ellen, that you want town meeting to actually, you know, see this and have a conversation about it. I think there are a lot of people that would want to have a conversation about, you know, helping some of our retirees. And I worry that, you know, presenting that to town meeting without all of the homework is gonna make town meeting question whether or not we're prepared when we show up and present these warrant articles. And we've tried to be careful about that. And we've had some experiences where, you know, I want to be as mindful about that as possible as a board, because when we go, we want to make sure that they will trust that we're going to come with all of our homework.
So,
And I will say there was one retirement board member that shared that exact sentiment, was they felt like it might be better to not move forward with the article because they felt like indefinitely postponing it at town meeting might make people have negative feelings about it
Weary
when
about
it
it in the future.
finally came forward.
I think we should, I think we should work with the retirement board. I think we should work to get to a yes, and we should have Siegel, you know, update their analysis, so that way we have all of the information, so this has the best chance of success. That's my strong
based on that,
recommendation.
based on David's comments, I think that gets us to where the retirement board wants to be. Having open conversations with the goal of getting somewhere.
Just not right now.
What do you think?
So I'm speaking for myself, not for the retirement board, because we didn't, you know, sort of have we only had a straw vote, and we have difference of opinions. I personally am fine with that.
If I kind of add things up a little bit with the third person that Amy mentioned, and Amy and you, there might be an emerging majority even from the retirement board for that perspective. But regardless,
I think there's a
Yeah.
path here, and I don't think people need to see this as something negative. I think, you know, it just needs to, we got to get there. We got to find that, you know, way to balance some of these financial responsibilities.
David summarized it perfectly, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you're our liaison, Mary Ellen, so you sit there, you hear,
Yeah, and I show up.
you do show up. And we thank you for that.
I'm just very sensitive to not, you know,
Yeah, I just think the
sending a big fat no
takeaway-
back to the retirement board. It's a not yet.
I think
So
that
that's all, yeah.
hopefully between Bob and Mary Ellen, the takeaway is
I think we are where,
not
I think we are where we want
no,
to be.
it is more, we want to work with you to get to yes.
All right, so there is a motion.
Motion that was seconded, all in favor to remove Article 13 from this year's town meeting warrant?
Aye.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Okay.
So make a motion to favorable action on Article 14?
Second.
Oh, we already did it, actually.
Oh, we
we
did?
The board already did that.
Look at us.
Capital.
Article 15.
This is for FY '24 capital projects.
I make a motion to report favorable action from the select board on Article 15.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So I am an aye with
Asterisk?
an asterisk, because
Is that a
in
thing?
this, I looked at something,
No, this is a 15.
These two.
We've gone too far.
300.
this is 15, are we on, oh, I'm sorry, 15, I'm an aye.
Okay.
Okay, no asterisk.
No asterisk.
Okay,
No asterisk, I'm an aye.
okay. Article 16.
Capital projects for FY '25.
And did Finance Committee wholeheartedly support all of Article 16 last night?
Finance Committee did vote favorably on all of 16 with the change to the shade trees. It was incorrectly coded as to free cash, and they moved it to borrowing. Otherwise, it was unanimous support on 16 as printed.
Okay.
Do we have a motion?
I would move favorable action on the
Article 16.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 So I have an asterisk on here,
Okay.
Why don't we just talk about it instead of having an asterisk?
because we're gonna have this, it's not gonna change the vote, so
Oh,
I just
okay.
wanna be on record, that I am not in support of, 75,000 in EV charging. I'm not in support of pickleball, the bottle filling stations, the Green Communities grants, because I don't have detail on that, the Town Hall, $50,000 study, and the Community Life, $100,000 study. I don't think these are vetted well enough, I don't think we have enough information, and I disagree with capital improvements and the Finance Committee,
Okay.
so I'm a no.
You're a,
So
you're
you're,
a yes.
so you're a
You're
yes,
not a no.
but
I'm a yes, but a no on those ones, so I'm a yes with my asterisk.
Got it, okay.
Maybe you should just abstain.
No,
No, because I'm in support of other things.
all
I
right,
don't think,
all right.
I just think mechanically,
Motion seconded, all opposed, or all in
It's,
favor?
we're 4-0 with asterisk,
Okay, great.
so, okay.
I didn't realize that was a
that's the
thing.
thing.
But
anyway,
I don't know.
First time I've seen the asterisk, but look,
I don't know if
it's a,
that's in Robert's
it's a
rules.
matter of, it's a public meeting, they'll be captured in the minutes, and I think it's okay.
No, it's
for-
fine, yeah, it's fine. Article
I don't want to
17,
spend any time learning anything more about those things. You just like, it's not worth it right now.
I can talk to you later.
okay. Article 17, we've already taken a vote. Article 18, Peter?
Yeah, Article 18, this is the zoning bylaw amendment regarding liquor establishments. I believe the board did not take a vote because there was a Scrivener's error in the edit. The proposed amendment is correct in this version, where only the removals are with regards to liquor establishments and serving liquor.
Okay,
This makes much more sense,
and this has been fully vetted by town council?
Yes.
Correct.
because it actually removes more for commercial establishments, selling or serving
select-
liquor instead of motor vehicle service stations and gas filling stations.
Perfect.
Select Board Member Spelio said after we made these adjustments, there was no need to have a meeting with town council and, approve this as well, so.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
Motion to recommend favorable action on Article 18.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. 19,
Already done?
already done.
The board's already acted.
We already did.
Okay, 20,
It's done.
21.
Yep.
Sorry.
no, all good.
Well, we did, I mean, I think these were a couple of the ones that you were abstaining last time. I
Oh,
don't know if you
but
wanted
we're all
to
done? No, let's
just keep going.
keep going.
Okay.
21.
21, gas-powered leaf blowers.
So there's two items on this article. First, well, we need the select board to make the recommendation, but also there was a note from council. Section 1 currently only provides restriction and clarification on what happens between Memorial Day and Labor Day, but not outside of that period.
Right.
That's what we were looking
The
for.
current language does allow leaf blowers outside that period, and the recommendation from council is simply to keep that sentence in here.
Well, that was what was changed, because last week it was too broad. It was the
was
whole year.
all.
Last year was all.
Correct.
So that moved
Change is good.
to
That's
reflect what we
Yep.
actually
What we
had
voted on
passed
last year.
right.
last year.
Okay.
And then we get on to the fines, and the question was, who are we fining? We fining the homeowner or the
It's
business?
the homeowner.
You've double checked that.
We have.
But where does it say that here?
Whoa. Uh-oh. What does that mean?
That means
That means
it's too long.
That's my mic drop, guys.
Bedtime.
Write it again.
We need to jump around, I guess.
Thank you. So can,
Chris is
Doesn't say.
really trying to get his testing machine. You see, he's like staying for the
love
whole
it.
thing.
So it doesn't say who the violation goes to in the enforcement.
so can we add
Yes.
a note in the comment that just says, and collect fines for violations from the homeowner, payable by the
Should
homeowner?
we- It should be in the language, I think, of the bylaw, who the enforcement is against.
I will get that language for homeowner in here.
Or at least in the comment,
If-
right?
well, But if you just put it in the comment, then it's open to interpretation, right? And then in the future.
Gotta be in the
It's
language.
gotta be in the
It's gotta
language.
Fair enough.
It's gotta be in the
enforcement
actual
to
language.
say,
Fair.
Homeowner can come in and say, well, you should charge my landscaper. I didn't tell him to use a gas-powered leaf blower. So,
So with
I think
the,
it
so
should be
with,
clear.
so with the change to specify homeowner within the context of Article 21, can we recommend favorable action this evening?
I'd like to, if I just have a minute to think about this. I mean, to me, my instinctive reaction is that the offense action, the second and subsequent offense fee seems like a lot. But I haven't really thought it through, because I was really expecting you to come back and say it was going to be on the business. So I haven't really been thinking about the fact that this is a homeowner, and, you know, you hire a company, they show up, you're not there. Okay, so then you get a warning. Warning's on your door when you come home, right? Okay, so now you've got an opportunity, you basically get in touch with a landscaper and say, don't do that again.
Use your
'cause
electric blower and.
Otherwise, I'm not going to pay your bill because I'm going to get a fee.
Right.
Yeah, it's change. You know, we want to be helpful. We passed this last year. We wanted to give everybody kind of a heads up. Hey, you know, we've got to be a little better. These, we get a lot of complaints about noise, especially, you know.
Oh, I mean, I'm very much in favor of it, but I also want to be kind of fair and, you know, we did pass it last year, but it's only going into effect beginning of next month, really. It's the first time it's going to happen.
Yep.
when would these enforcements begin then?
As soon as the Attorney General approves the warrant.
Oh, so that's like 90 days maybe, right? No. So this year's pretty much over. Okay, that actually makes me feel better in a way.
So it wouldn't
It's
start
really
until
not starting until the following.
fiscal year
Yeah.
20,
Yeah.
calendar
Okay.
25.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
And then also, who's writing these tickets? The Swampscott Police Department and the Health Department?
Could be any municipal, fish could be our building commissioner, code enforcement,
Select board
could be
members?
health.
I don't have time for that. You got time for that?
Katie be out there?
But practically speaking, who do we assume is gonna be?
I think it's going to be the building commissioner and the building inspectors, maybe health director.
Well, okay, so you kind of introduced another question then, Sean, because then why do we say police department and health department and not?
Yeah, building commissioner and health director.
The building commissioner's not even on here.
So add
Yeah.
that in there.
Let's add it.
We can add it.
Yeah.
These are generally zoning, you know, and code enforcement. You know, we have a number of employees that can do that. The police department is busy, you know. It'd be hard for them to do code enforcement and,
Yeah.
but, you know, if they can't do it, that's great. You know, I think weekends, that's when they can step in. And, you know, we wanted to have a number of municipal officials that have code enforcement
So
responsibilities.
should we just add in here, Swampscott Building
Sure.
Department?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that.
And 300 is, what our neighbors charge?
It is, yeah. But you have the prerogative to change that.
I'm good
number.
with this.
The same.
So I guess I'll make a motion to recommend favorable action on Article 21.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks. 22.
I'll make a motion to recommend favorable action on Article 22.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'm gonna abstain. I didn't do my homework and read that document that Amy sent me.
Okay. Article 23.
Select Board will report on this article at town meeting.
Yeah, why does it say that?
The finance committee, are we waiting on the finance committee for this?
They recommended favorable action.
So we don't have to wait then?
I think as of our last meeting, they had not yet opined, but since they have a motion.
Should we not
No, they,
Should I make a motion?
sure.
I'll make a motion to recommend favorable action on Article 23.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Mary Ellen?
I just want to, I'm an aye, but I just want to double check, that is the actual number in there? Was there a question of whether or not,
The 225, and then it's half, so the half's in the comment.
That is the correct number, Mary Ellen.
okay, okay. I'm an aye.
All right. And we do not have to,
Oh, wasn't the question because this was in two places?
Yeah.
Is that this one?
It was.
That got taken out of
They got
capital.
taken out of the capital.
yep,
Got it.
okay.
And another just shout out, in Article 22, someone did fill in that number of parking spaces. It was an X last week, and now it says 6.
Great
Thank you,
job.
Pete.
Great job, Pete.
That was me, but
I don't know that it was me, yeah.
Great job. Accolades for all.
All right, so that's
And
it.
then there were just some references to the appendices. Those all got updated. We talked about that last week.
We will double check that, Katie. I know that we have everybody looking at this. This will go to town council for their final review. They'll tick and tie all those appendices. Page numbers will list the warrant articles based on the removal of one. We'll get a draft out to the board before we finalize it. So if you see any scrivener's errors or things that, you think we should update, we'll do that as well.
Okay, so do,
So a motion to
Close
close
the
the
warrant,
warrant,
yeah.
aside from the scrivener's errors?
So moved.
all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Yeah, that was nice. We have consent agenda item, vote to approve the minutes of the regular meetings of April 3rd and April 10th.
Can you pull them out? I just want to vote on I don't want to vote on these until we have a chance to read them.
Yeah, I didn't see them beforehand, sorry, yeah.
Okay,
so-
no,
I
all
think we
good,
just got them
Okay.
as we came in here tonight.
all good. Select board,
Wait, should we vote on the grant, though?
we already did.
We
No,
did.
the other, oh, yep. The grant and the letter we voted on.
Yes.
I
Yes,
think everybody
we
signed.
voted on that.
Yep. All right. Select board time.
I just want to say thank you to Sammy Dowd and Joe Duet. I think those are the only two that are here.
No, Nathan's here.
Oh, Nathan is here?
He's hiding in the back.
Okay, thank you, Nathan. I also want to remind people to get out and vote next week. It's really important. We got to try to get our percentages up there. And I'd like Sean to give us an update on what's happening with the issues around the election in precinct 3 and 5. So hopefully you can give us an update on that tonight.
Sure. There was an error in the ballot for precinct 3 and 5, and individuals were mailed out corrected ballots. Some people voted early. They got a note in their ballot that they have a corrected one. If they didn't want to fill out the new ballot, we'll still count their vote. But these are common issues. We don't like to see them, but certainly I've met with the town clerk and assistant clerk, and we've come up with a committee that will review the ballots and double check them and make sure that we have staff that don't look at all those names every day for a month and can just tick and tie that. So,
It sounds like it's a real isolated issue and that there's a lot of mechanisms in place to fix it, and
Yep.
just had a number of people call and want to know about it. And
yeah, it was just an error, and we've corrected it, and we were in touch with the state. They explained that this happens too often to, get into, but, we certainly haven't had something like this happen in some time, and, I don't think we'll see it again.
I think one of the issues were, there were people, actually, I talked to a family, and they received, the husband and the wife both received 2 ballots. And so they had called me and said, we received 2 ballots, what's going on?
Yeah.
And,
One was an error. We actually just listed somebody that was running for one of the precincts was listed twice. And so we can't have people getting elected in two different precincts. So we have to correct that.
Right, but they didn't understand why they had two ballots, like there was nothing on the outside of the ballot saying, you
What
know,
was correct?
this is your new ballot, you know, warning, so that's what threw them off, and I said, open up the ballots and see if there's a letter in there, and they opened it up and then found it.
Yeah.
See, so that's what threw some people off,
All right, so that's a good suggestion. Maybe there's a sticker that we should put on the outside of the ballot,
or a stamp,
you know?
Choose me.
Yeah.
I'm your ballot.
Don't believe that other ballot.
I just have I have a few things. I just want to wish a happy Administrative Professionals Day to one of my favorites, Diane Marchese.
Yay.
Diane, you keep us on task
today?
and you keep us organized. And thank you from the Select Board.
Thank you, Diane.
And certainly, I would be remiss if I didn't have a couple comments for our colleague who's not with us this evening. But tonight is the end of over 2 decades of service for our colleague, Peter Spelios. Peter has actually been in public service so long, he had hair before volunteering with the town. And after spending a decade on the ZBA.
Protected ADA, you know.
After spending over a decade on the ZBA, Peter put his time where his values are and ran for Select Board in 2015. At the time, the town was not doing much, and the prior year, the 2014 iteration of the new Swampscott Elementary School failed, and he felt enough was enough. He ran against an incumbent and won a seat on the Select Board, where he ended up serving for 9 years and being the chair for 3, including a year plus as the chair during the pandemic. He ran not because Swampscott was his hometown, but because he wanted to make Swampscott a better place, and because Swampscott was the hometown of his kids. In the 9 years he served on this board, the town has certainly moved forward by leaps and bounds. The town's in a much better financial position because of his efforts and focus on strong financial stewardship. Peter's institutional knowledge, having served on the board for 3 terms, is enormous and will be big shoes to fill. I really got to know Peter in 2019. And by sheer luck, both of us attended a meeting for the Seaside Cooperative Garden in Vinnon Square. We got to talking, and Peter asked if I was ready to take action to help the town. I asked him what he had in mind, and he mentioned beach, beers, and live music. Any interest? I jumped at the chance and created the Swampscott Beer Garden, and since have helped post numerous events which have raised money for a wide variety of causes in Swampscott, all while bringing joy to residents and visitors for years, and hopefully years to come. And many, many people have similar stories all around Swampscott. Peter was not simply additive to Swampscott, he was multiplicative in his efforts to make the town a better place than he found it over 2 decades ago. And I think it's appropriate to point out some of the accomplishments that occurred during his time on the board. A few of these include the rail trail, the harbor and waterfront plan, the community gardens, the green power community, beach entrances, historic lighting, LED streetlights, public art, including beach stickers, railroad bridge, entrance sign, porch fest, Greenwood Avenue school reuse, Mashon school reuse, Hadley school reuse committee, Swampscott for all ages, Fish House historic preservation, COVID response, civil service change, a facilities department, PEG TV expansion, capital projects planning, town hall reorg, financial summit, fiscal guidelines, limited tax increases, increased senior citizen tax abatement, veterans tax abatement program, expanded reserve funds, affordable housing trust fund, enterprise stabilization funds, increased number of liquor licenses, recreational marijuana, plastic bag and straw ban, aggregate accountability, blighted buildings bylaw, Marion Court negotiation, Lincoln House Point negotiation, Elm Place negotiation, new Swampscott Elementary School, Hawthorne acquisition, new police chief, solid waste enterprise fund, select board renamed, Hadley property deed restricted against market rate housing, Archer Street negotiation, veterans housing, St. John's parking agreement, 7 hotel responses to the Hadley RFP, gas-powered leaf blower ban, Tedesco taxation. Peter, we're going to miss you. I'll miss you. and on behalf of myself, I'm sure you're watching intently this evening at 10 o'clock. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for your service to the town of Swampscott, and just know that your work mattered. Thanks.
Well said, David, really great. Yeah. All right. David, I'd like to just, I'd like to share a few comments about Peter. Public service is harder today than it has been in my memory. I feel as though, as select board members, you get paid zero. You're volunteers, and it's important that people understand that, this town is run by volunteers, and it takes an awful lot to sacrifice your time away from your family. It takes an awful lot to stand up and face opposition, and deal with, leadership. There's a quote by Bobby Kennedy: "The first task of leadership, the first task of concerned people, is not to condemn, castigate, or deplore. It's to search out the reason for disillusionment, the rationale for protest and dissent, and indeed perhaps to learn from it." I feel as though Peter, at his best, was willing to sit and listen and try to figure issues out. Yes, he had a strong voice, and yes, he did fight for things passionately, but he did listen, and he did try to find a way to see things that I think a lot of us could appreciate. He had a perspective that he worked to achieve, and it was good to see at times. We addressed some very complicated issues, and he sat and he worked through those, and Swampscott's better for it. I think, the real test is, you look at elected officials or public officials, like, do they make their community better? And I think in every respect, Peter has helped Swampscott be better. Nobody who serves in public life is perfect. And certainly there's plenty of folks that can help us and often remind us that we have work to do. But, 9 years as a select citizen in this town, absolutely. A wonderful legacy. And something that I think, if it's worthy of his time and effort, man, it's worthy for everybody. This is one of the most important ways that you can spend your time. This is one of the most important ways that you can spend your life. And it's a great quality that you all share. You're doing your best to try to help this town succeed, and that's a wonderful legacy that, Peter leaves us all with, but it's a tall order in the sense that, how do we continue to challenge this blue bubble to be better? It'll be interesting to see.
Thanks, Sean. Anything additional?
I mean, I very much appreciate the time that I spent on the board with Peter as well. And I'm still a little bit aghast at the fact that he's figured out a way to dodge this moment. So
Believe me.
that really just is the crowning achievement of this whole 9 years, and to figure out a way to not be available in this time. I sure hope he's got a good excuse. There's David said it very well. Sean, you did as well. That there's big shoes to fill, and I think as I was starting to think about projects coming and who's on first with them over the coming months, we're all gonna have to step up at another level to. I think we're gonna see the hole that he's leaving as the next meetings and months come by. So I'm very appreciative. I have nothing else for select board time tonight, believe it or not.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'll just echo what Doug said about this hole that we need filled, because I've worked, not quite 9 years with Peter, but on the projects that I am on with him, he's a constant driver to move it forward, to get things done, to find compromise, to find unique ways of fixing issues, and he's got so much knowledge, and that definitely drives efficiency. So there is just going to be a total curveball thrown at, sort of all of us in some instances, because, just the starting off point is a little bit different for some of us on the board. And so it's been a pleasure to work with him and to get to pick his brain and get to ask dumb questions outside of the public's eye from time to time and get a real education. And I appreciate his time and energy, and we're grateful to have had him.
And because I understand he doesn't want a chair, I think we need to give him like 3 of them, just so they're like really like in his way and he can't like get out of the way and
Maybe
everything.
John Piccarello can make him something else.
It might be a big, long proclamation, we're going to have to, it's interesting, Peter had asked for one thing. He asked for a list of every select board member that had ever been elected in town, and he wanted it to have it displayed at Town Hall. And I thought, that's emblematic of Peter. He doesn't like clutter, so I can forgive him for the chair thing, even though I think, the chair's not for you, it's for your posterity. It's for people, generations that come after you. I do think, the role of select board member, that's important. It's important that people don't forget how important that leadership position is. People today don't believe that these positions are important, but they are. There's a tremendous amount of power. You can either improve the quality of life for people, or you can be indifferent to it. And I look around to cities and towns, and you can see the folks that care passionately, and I do trust that you will serve Swampscott well. You're a smart board, and you will continue to do extraordinary things. The things that are in play right now are inconceivable. A new elementary school 6 years ago was inconceivable. A hotel at the Hadley, nobody in a million years would tell you that we would be bringing a boutique hotel to this beautiful little town. Building our financial reserves from $2 million to $10 million, inconceivable. People did not believe that Swampscott would have an average single-family tax bill that would be less than Marblehead's. It was not conceivable. But all these things are possible because of some really, really difficult and hard, but important conversations that this board had. Peter didn't do anything by himself. Most important thing that he did was pull a team around these important issues. And Swampscott's benefited from that greatly.
Thanks, Sean.
I actually do have one other thing if we're done with the
Go ahead.
the beginning of the Peter Swan song. I'm sure it will go on to town meeting or whatever, but Earth Fest, this Saturday, right? Town Hall, we're not at, anyway, Town Hall lawn, 10 to 1. It's going to be a zillion different things going on there.
Hungry Heron is out there right now, so you can go put some.
Go feed him.
Hungry Heron is out there, and you put some trash in there. You can buy some bikes. You can learn a lot about a lot of different things. So get out and go green on Saturday. Diane.
Solid Waste is also holding a cleanup all around the town. So at some point, I think it'll probably be on the website, but they are gonna be looking for volunteers on Saturday.
Oh, on Saturday they're doing cleanup.
I believe it is, yeah.
Okay.
I'll find out probably tomorrow morning and clarify that, yeah.
Thanks, Dave.
Motion to adjourn.
So
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Right.